Chapter 750. Gong Yimo was very unwilling to be controlled by someone, but this person could make her feel pain, so she could only bear with it and walk out unwillingly. Her shoes were thrown away somewhere, and her clothes were tattered. She stood barefoot on the ground, her black hair flying in the wind. The moment she appeared, a murderous aura rushed towards them. Her eyes were red, but she did not lose her rationality like those who were controlled. So from this point, Gong Yimo's guess was right. She was now the king of goo poison, but she was not complete. To be complete, she still needed one more thing, the stone heart. Good child. I know you can control those poison people too. Shui did not dare to get too close to her, because the murderous aura on her body was too frightening, but his eyes swept over her body in satisfaction. The scars became more and more hideous, as if they were about to split open. Go. Take some people and kill the leaders of the other party. When Gong Yimo heard this, she did not move, because she did not want to kill the people he mentioned. Seeing that she did not move, Shui sneered, and directly ordered the goo poison to drill into her heart. That inhuman pain made Gong Yimo's eyes reveal a human-like fear. She bared her teeth at Shui, but in the next second, she rolled on the ground in pain. Shui saw that she had tasted pain, then slowly listened to her and said coldly, "If you don't want to do it again, then go and kill them. I know you know what I mean." The way he pinched the stone heart was so hateful. Gong Yimo lay on the ground, her scarlet pupils constricting. Finally, she rushed out. After she went out, she let out a long cry. Those poison people seemed to have been stimulated in an instant, and their strength became stronger. Furthermore, after the voice transmission bird died, the scattered poisoned people seemed to have found their backbone, and order was restored once again. The sudden turn of events caused the Allied forces to be flustered, and a figure jumped onto the high cliff, roaring angrily at the people below. Seeing her, everyone panicked. Longqing Wuji was stunned for a moment, because Gong Yimo's scarlet eyes were aimed straight at him. "Don't panic. Continue. Kill them," Longqing Wuji ordered and pulled out his sword. Gong Yimo locked onto him and jumped down from above to grab him. But at this moment, a wave of arrows suddenly came from the side. She twisted her body to avoid it and suddenly jumped onto a tree. Kim Yun ordered them to stop, and Longqing Wuji cupped his fists towards him. "Thank you for saving me." Kim Yun was on high alert. Now is not the time to be thankful. Be careful. She's here again. Shui watched all of this from the shadows. Countless people were fighting for him. Countless people had lost their lives because of him. This feeling was too good. It was as if he was not the child of a slave, and was not bullied because he was not a pure Snow clan member. He was the king, the fully deserving ruler of the world. But at this time, his heart ached again. This was definitely not an illusion. But why was he in pain? Could it be? At that moment, Shui's eyes widened in horror. Only then did he realize what he had missed. "What are you doing?" The old man finally realized that something was wrong with Shuiyan. She was actually standing beside his medicine furnace. Shuiyan's expression was cold. "You said that if I jumped down, I would definitely die. Would you be willing to refine me into medicine? After all, you have no other choice." The old man was frightened. "What are you doing? Your husband is not dead yet. Are you trying to kill him?" "Ha ha ha ha." Shuiyan laughed when she heard this. Her face was charming, and her smile was even more beautiful. But at this moment, there was endless madness in her beauty. "Yes, I want him to die. I want him to die." The old man sucked in a breath of cold air. Shuiyan took another step towards the medicine furnace. "If you want to live, you have to refine me into medicine. When the time comes, you can give the medicine to the region of Dayu State. He will naturally spare your life. You have no other choice." She smiled and spoke calmly and cruelly. The old man opened his mouth, but in the end, he did not know what to say. Looking at the boiling medicine in the medicine furnace, Shuiyan's eyes flashed with madness. If everything was fake, then let it all end. She did not want to live for a moment longer. It was too disgusting, too disgusting. It's a pity that I can't watch your child be born. As she thought about this, She closed her eyes and jumped down. The fire under the medicine furnace instantly rose. The moment Gong Dai rushed over, he saw her jump down. His breathing stagnated, and he felt a little regretful. Actually, he wanted to know what else she wanted to say to the royal sister so that the royal sister would not be so sad. As soon as Shuelian jumped down, the lid above the medicine furnace also fell down with a bang. In the midst of the commotion, the old man suddenly saw Gong Dai appear here, and his heart trembled. Was this person here to kill him? Gong Dai looked at the medicine furnace for a long time, then slowly looked at the old man. His thin lips moved. Give me the antidote or die. The moment Shuelian jumped down, Shui felt a sharp pain in his heart. Finally, his chest swelled, and a golden moth came out of his body. Of course, he knew what it was. In his shock, Shui only had time to spit out a mouthful of blood. Then, he watched as the Goo King flew out of his body and was caught by a man in red who had suddenly appeared. Si Wuyin shook the bottle somewhat proudly. It was not in vain that he had been looking for Shui from the start. After finding him, he had been hiding here all this time. Otherwise, the Goo King would have escaped. At the same time, Lo Chi also appeared. He led people to protect Si Wuyin. After all, he also knew that the Goo King in Si Wuyin's hands was the key to saving the princess. This way, as long as the prince brought back the antidote, the princess would not have to take the risk of taking the stone core, nor would she have to risk breaking through to the 9th stage of the transformative state. Everything depended on the princess's safety. After Shui spat out blood, he covered his wound and suddenly screamed, "Lian-er!" There was no mistake, because Lian-er was about to die. Only when she was in danger would the Goo King break out of her body to save her. Lian-er! Lian-er! His eyes were red. For a moment, he did not know what he had lost. On the other side, after several sneak attacks by Gong Yimo, Longqing Wuji was already seriously injured. If not for the fact that Gong Yimo still had a trace of wisdom and did not kill him, he would have been a corpse long ago. Gong Yimo! Shui suddenly screamed as he pinched the stone core. That sorrowful cry instantly made everyone present ready for battle. Si Wuyin had a bad feeling and said to Lo Chi, "He's calling for Gong Yimo. Let's go first, before Gong Yimo kills us." Lo Chi nodded. The Goo King was more important. In the distance, Gong Yimo heard the call and frowned, but still ran in Shui's direction. Longqing Wuji and Kim Yun both sighed in relief. They had finally escaped with their lives. Shui's eyes were filled with madness. He stood up, drew his sword, and killed all the people around him who were protecting him. If they were not useless, how could Si Wuyin have caught the Goo King? Chapter 751. But even killing people could not quell his grief and anger. Perhaps Shuelian was not dead yet? Perhaps the other party was just trying to force the Goo King out of his body? He forced himself to calm down. Then, when he saw Gong Yimo, he ordered her to go back and save Shuelian. Gong Yimo stared at him with her red eyes, as if asking, what if she died? This knowledge made Shui's heart ache. If Lian-er dies, Shui suddenly sat down on the stone chair, as if all his strength had been sucked out of him. His eyes were twisted with pain and madness. He ordered through gritted teeth, "If Shuelian dies, kill the person who killed her. Tear him into pieces. Tear him into pieces." Gong Yimo saw that his emotions were unstable and immediately left. She knew who Shuelian was and what she looked like, but there was no emotion in her eyes, only frustration and anger. She wanted the red thing in his hand. She felt that she was missing something, and only that could fill it. With a loud bang, the entire pharmacy exploded. In the chaos, Gong Dai could clearly see that there was a white pill in the thick liquid that splattered everywhere. The old man was injured by the explosion. He stared at the pill, knowing that it was the antidote. Gong Dai sucked the pill in his hand, his heart thumping. With it, Royal Sister did not have to worry about these messy poisons anymore. You promised not to kill me. You have to remember," the old man added worriedly. Before Gong Dai could speak, the old man was pierced from the back. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He never thought that he would die at the hands of the beast that he had created. Gong Yimo smelled that Shui Yin's scent had dissipated here, but she was not here, which meant that she was dead. And there were only two people here. They were the people who had killed Shui Yin. So, she did not hesitate. She killed one of them, then looked at the other. She did not forget Shui Ye's crazy eyes. It seemed that she had to kill, or he would torture her to death. The moment Gong Dai saw Gong Yimo, his breathing stopped, especially when he saw her red eyes. He felt even more heartache. If he had protected her back then, she would not have lost her memory, and she would not have been taken advantage of. Now, Gong Dai realized that he was not a good husband. The antidote was in his hands, but he could not let Royal Sister take it now, because he was not sure if Si Wuyan had caught the Gu King. If Si Wuyan did not, and he let Royal Sister regain her consciousness, what if Shui Yi realized that he had lost his advantage and Royal Sister? So when Gong Yimo rushed over, Gong Ju blindly dodged. He took Gong Yimo and ran back. His hatred for Shui Yi reached its peak. Whoever dared to treat Royal Sister like this, he would definitely die a horrible death. Gong Yimo saw him run and chased after him, but Gong Dai was still stronger than her. She could not catch up, which made her even angrier. On the other side, because Gong Yimo was not present, the coalition forces were suppressing the poison soldiers. Coupled with the fact that the strength of the poison soldiers was exhausted, many of them fell to the ground in the end. This one-sided suppression made Shui Yi deeply understand the meaning of despair. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was his wife? Was his Lianer still alive? If she was dead, the past repeated itself in front of his eyes. Every day, when he wore Fu Ye's mask, he felt very angry, helpless, and repressed. Now that he thought about it, was he really that repressed? Could he really not live with the mask for the rest of his life? Shui Yi questioned himself again and again. Back then, he felt that he could not breathe while wearing the mask. But was it really that uncomfortable? Wasn't the fake happiness real happiness? He suddenly remembered that Shui Yin had asked him before, between Jiang Shan and her, who would he choose? He said he wanted both. She asked, what if he could only choose one? Shui Yi clutched his pierced chest. If he could only choose one, what could compare to supreme power and status? Was there really nothing that could compare to it? No, he could not stay here any longer. He wanted to kill. He wanted to kill those people. With this thought, Shui Yi seemed to wake up from a dream and chased after Si Wuyan. At this moment, Gong Dai stopped Si Wuyan. Seeing that Gong Dai had come, Si Wuyan was overjoyed. Did you get it? Gong Dai nodded. Si Wuyan took out the bottle in his hand. I got it too. As long as someone who is good at using Gu plays the flute, the Gu King will summon the Gu worm in Gong Yimo's body. At that time, the other party will be dead. Gong Dai frowned. It's so troublesome. Si Wuyan sighed. There's no other way. I've never learned how to control Gu worms. But now that Shui Yi doesn't have the Gu King, he won't dare to do anything to Gong Yimo, unless he wants to die. But this was what Gong Dai was worried about. He was afraid that Shui Yi would want to die together with them. His royal sister would also be hurt. Did he still need the stone heart? At this moment, Gong Yimo had already arrived. She charged at Gong Dai fiercely. She did not know that this was her lover. But in the next second, as if she had heard a call, she suddenly retreated. Gong Dai's hand, which had been clamping down on her, missed. Then, he saw Shui Yi run out of the forest, covered in blood. He gripped the stone heart tightly. Gong Yimo was his last hope. Seeing that Gong Yimo did not bring anyone back, Shui Ye's pupil shrank. He looked at Gong Dai as if he wanted to eat him up. It was you who killed her? She's your wife's mother. You actually killed her? Seeing Shui Yi, Gong Dai's hatred was no less than his. He took out the white pill in his hand and sneered. Royal sister is your daughter. You're worse than a beast. Chapter 752. Everyone was shocked. Gong Dai watched coldly as Shui Yi crawled towards him. His eyes flickered with uneasiness. It was obvious that he had fallen into chaos. Give her back to me. I beg you. Can you give her back to me? It was as if as long as Gong Dai gave him the elixir, Shui Yin would come back to life. Gong Dai looked at the person crawling to his feet. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. I can give her back to you, but you have to use the stone heart in exchange. Shui's eyes lit up when he heard that. He hurriedly took out the stone heart. Gong Dai smiled gently and reached out to take it. However, at that moment, the originally gloomy sky suddenly exploded with a sudden clap of thunder. Winter's thunder was an ominous sign. At that moment, all the uneasiness, fear, and regret in Shui's eyes disappeared. Shuilian was already dead. No matter what he did, she would not come back to life. After a moment of despair, Shui suddenly raised his head and looked at Gong Dai. Gong Yimo, kill him. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and quickly retreated. However, Gong Yimo had already rushed over. Although Gong Dai was more powerful than Gong Yimo, Gong Dai was afraid of hurting her and held back. On the other hand, Gong Yimo was ruthless. At that moment, Shui slowly crawled up from the ground and approached Si Wuyin with a sinister smile. I haven't lost yet. I haven't lost yet. Give the Gu King back to me. Give the Gu King back to me. Lo Qi and the rest immediately stepped forward to protect Si Wuyin. Si Wuyin kept retreating. On the other side, Gong Dai and Gong Yimo had already exchanged hundreds of blows. Gong Dai tried to stuff the antidote into Gong Yimo's mouth several times, but to no avail. This was probably the only antidote in the world. If Gong Yimo had any sense, she would not have let him feed it to her. She would have used it to duplicate the antidote. However, Gong Dai did not care about that. Those people were dead. Their lives added together could not even compare to a single strand of Gong Yimo's hair. Royal sister, wake up. Gong Dai used his internal energy to suppress her, forcing her to look into his eyes. However, Gong Yimo did not even look at him. Instead, she used all her strength to break free. Seeing that she did not recognize him at all, Gong Dai's eyes darkened, and Gong Yimo once again struggled free, grabbing towards him. That sharp killing intent was as if he was her enemy. Gong Dai's heart ached for a moment before his eyes focused. He tilted his head slightly, only avoiding his vitals. Finally, he found a chance to stuff the antidote into her mouth. Then, he lifted her chin and forced her to swallow it. But it was precisely this movement of his hand. Gong Yimo had left 3 deep bloodstains on his face, ruining the face that was blessed by the heavens and earth. As the antidote entered her mouth, Gong Yimo felt extremely uncomfortable. As for Gong Dai, he endured the pain on his face and hugged her, soothing the raging vital energy in her body over and over again. It's all right now. It's all right now. Royal sister, it's all right now. Gong Dai hugged her tightly. Hearing her sobs, he frowned deeply. At the same time, a trace of determination flashed across his eyes. I won't let you get hurt again, unless I die. Unfortunately, Gong Yimo, who was in pain, did not hear him. Seeing that Gong Yimo had taken the antidote, Shui killed a few people but still did not manage to snatch the Gu King. At the end of his rope, he suddenly ate the stone heart. Si Wuyin was shocked. Gong Dai heard the sound and looked over, only to see that Shui's entire body had turned blood red. His face had been swollen out of shape by some unknown force. He had turned into a monster. He hurriedly handed Gong Yimo to Lo Qi, then stabbed Shui with his sword. Shui suddenly raised his head and glanced at Gong Dai. His eyes were bloodshot and his body was swollen, but he could still smile at a time like this. Gong Dai pulled out his sword, and the wound healed instantly. He was shocked and quickly retreated, just in time to avoid the other party's thunderous attack. You guys take Royal Sister and leave first. Gong Dai turned the sword in his hand, ready to attack. He's no longer human. When Si Wuyin heard this, he hurriedly carried the unconscious Gong Yimo and ran away. Shui wanted to chase after them, but was stopped by Gong Dai. Your opponent is me. After being stopped, Shui's body swelled due to anger. He did not say a word and directly charged at Gong Dai like a bull. The sky darkened, the wind and clouds changed color, and it actually started to snow. Shui's strength had increased tremendously, and his movements were very agile. All the injuries that landed on his body healed instantly. Gong Dai's expression froze, and his eyes fell on his neck. He wanted to see if he could grow another one without a head. At this moment, Gong Yimo woke up. Where was she? Could it be that Gong Dai had snatched the stone heart and fed it to her? Then, she regained her consciousness? When Si Wuyan saw that she had woken up, he asked anxiously, "Are you okay?" Gong Yimo suddenly had a headache. What had just happened flashed through her mind like a movie. Gong Yimo was shocked. She had not expected that she had hurt Gong Dai. No, Gong Dai was in danger now. Just as Gong Dai was about to cut off Shui Ye's head, he suddenly laughed maliciously. "If you kill me, Gong Yimo will die too." Hearing this, Gong Dai quickly turned the sword in his hand. He only managed to cut Shui Ye's chest, but the wound immediately healed. Shui Yi approached Gong Dai step by step. "If you dare to cut me again, I'll make Gong Yimo suffer a heart-wrenching pain. Even if she can take it, I don't know if the child can take it when the pain reaches its limit." Blood flowed down Gong Dai's face. That was the wound that Gong Yimo had left behind. It made half of his face look like an immortal, and the other half like a devil. "You better not resist." Shui Yi walked over step by step. "If you dare to resist, I'll make Gong Yimo suffer a fate worse than death." As he spoke, he swung his palm at Gong Dai, but in the next second, his heart was pierced from the back. Shui Ye's hand stopped in midair, and his eyes flashed with malevolence. "Gong Yimo." Gong Yimo was behind him, panting slightly. "Don't you have any shame? You killed Mother, and you still have the face to continue living? Shouldn't you go to the underworld and apologize?" Gong Yimo's words made Shui Ye's pupil shrink. Then he roared and used his internal energy to push Gong Yimo away. "Royal sister." Gong Dai caught Gong Yimo. "You shouldn't have come back." Gong Yimo touched his injured face, her heart aching. "Do you think I can escape if I don't come back?" As she spoke, her gaze fell on Shui Yi. "Today, either he dies or I die." Shui Yi laughed loudly. "I'll let you die here together, as a pair of ghost mandarin ducks." As he spoke, he attacked again. Gong Dai hurriedly fought back. He was stronger than Shui Yi, but he was worried about the royal sister. He frowned deeply, not knowing what to do. Gong Yimo had already stood up. "Kill him. Take out the stone heart. With the stone heart, I won't die." Hearing this, Gong Dai's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He cut off one of his opponent's hands. His opponent's hand did not grow back, but the cut was no longer bleeding. Shui Yi smiled maliciously at Gong Yimo. "If you want the stone heart, you have to be alive to take it." Chapter 753. After he finished speaking, Gong Yimo felt a heart-wrenching pain. "Royal sister." Gong Yimo was sweating profusely. "Don't worry about me. Kill him." She screamed. Shui Yi laughed. "If you kill me, Gong Yimo will die too. You can't save her." Gong Dai was in a dilemma. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth. "No. Kill him. Gong Dai, believe me." Gong Dai heard this and immediately moved. Only by killing Shui Yi could royal sister suffer less. Shui Yi was locked in place by the other party's powerful internal energy and had nowhere to run. "Go ahead and kill her. Sure Xian has already become one with me. If you kill me, she will die too. She lied to you on purpose to trick you into killing me." Shui Ye's words caused Gong Dai's sword to miss. The sharp wind from the sword swept through the forest and instantly cut down dozens of trees. It was clear that he really wanted to kill Shui Yi with that move. The pain continued. Gong Yimo screamed. The heart-wrenching pain was unbearable. Hearing her screams, Gong Dai's eyes turned red. "Stop. I want you to stop." Shui Yi smiled smugly. "You want me to stop? Sure. Kneel down and crawl over. Let me step on your head. I'll let her go." "No." Gong Yimo screamed weakly and looked at Shui Yi with hatred. She had never hated someone so much. "You're inhumane." "Inhumane?" Shui Yi looked at Gong Yimo. "Yes, you're humane. You care about all the people in the world. Everyone in the world is grateful to you. But what did your humanity bring you? You were tortured by me until you wished you were dead. Your husband didn't even dare to kill me because of you. Your humanity, what did it bring you?" Gong Yimo was in so much pain that she couldn't speak. On the other side, Gong Dai knelt down. Let her go. I'll do anything you want. He really knelt down. Shui felt refreshed all over. He was too happy. Seeing a person above others kneel down to him, that kind of pleasure was simply crazy. He said to Gong Yimo, take a good look now. Your righteousness and benevolence can't save you at all. You can only watch as I humiliate your man. As he spoke, he turned to Gong Dai and said smugly, you, crawl over here. No. At that moment, the heart-wrenching pain from the goo worms could not compare to the heartache. She had done so much, so why did she end up like this? When Gong Dai saw her tears, the pain in his eyes was no less than hers. However, this matter concerned her, so he had no other choice. Okay, I'll climb. As long as the royal sister was fine, so what if he broke all the bones in his body? At that moment, Shui Ye's smile was twisted. Ha ha ha, I am the king. I am the victor. So what if you killed all my men? As long as Gong Yimo is in my hands, you have to listen to me. Listen to me. Then you can go to hell. Gong Yimo suddenly exploded and appeared behind Shui Yi. In order to prevent him from healing, this time, she directly dug out his heart. She wanted to see how he could live without a heart. At that moment, Gong Dai's eyes widened. If Shui Yi died, then the royal sister would die. Shui Yi turned around in a panic and looked at the heart in Gong Yimo's hand. His mouth was bleeding non-stop, but he still smiled. If I die, you won't live either. Gong Yimo felt like her heart was being torn apart. Even if she died, she would not allow Shui Yi to humiliate Gong Dai. She would not allow it. Shui Yi was finally dead. At the last moment of his death, he suddenly thought, would Lien wait for him? If only everything could be redone. He was actually willing to wear a mask for the rest of his life. Gong Yimo fell into Gong Dai's arms. Once the mother goo died, the child goo went through the heart. Who would have thought that she would die for such a person? Royal sister. Gong Dai could barely find his voice. He saw that Gong Yimo's mouth was bleeding non-stop. Gong Yimo suddenly grabbed his hand. I'm sorry. Gong Yimo looked at him intently. Her eyes were filled with regret that even she did not know. Her voice was hoarse. If only I could do it all over again. I don't want Golden Age. I only want you. With that, she unwillingly closed her eyes. Gong Dai's eyes were still. It was as if from the moment Gong Yimo closed her eyes, he was also dead. At this moment, Si Wuyan finally rushed back. When he saw this scene, the bottle in his hand fell to the ground. The jade bottle shattered and the Goo King flew away, but it was no longer important. Gong Yimo was dead? Suddenly, there seemed to be a wind. At first, no one noticed, but gradually, the wind became stronger and stronger. It was like a whirlwind that shot into the sky, and the eye of the wind was the two people who were relying on each other. Not good. His Highness is imparting his skills. Lo Chi suddenly said, imparting skills? Si Wuyan did not understand. Lo Chi's expression was solemn. His Highness is using his lifetime's worth of skills to break through the princess's acupoints, but His Highness's foundation is already unstable after reaching the 8th level. This way, it's very likely that he won't be able to continue. If the princess can't be saved, His Highness will also. But what else could they do? Gong Dai's long hair fluttered in the wind. In the end, it turned completely white. He pressed his hand on Gong Yimo's back and injected all his internal energy into her body, breaking through one level after another. So what if he lost all his skills? So what if he died? He swore that as long as he was here, he would not allow her to get hurt, much less die. Gong Yimo suddenly frowned. Someone used all his strength to break through the 7th level, then the 8th level. No, it was Gong Dai. She could not let him do this. No, but her heart had been pierced and half of her body was already dead. She was powerless to stop it and could only passively endure it. But how could the 9th level be so easy to reach? Not only would she suck his internal energy dry, she would also suck Gong Dai's life force dry. Gong Dai will die. Stop him. He will die. The whirlwind swept the snowflakes away. At this moment, the people outside could no longer see the situation inside. Will Gong Yimo survive? Or will the two of them both die? In a trance, cold lips fell on Gong Yimo's lips. Gong Yimo could already feel that Gong Dai's foundation was completely destroyed, but he still did not care. He continued to inject all his strength into her body. After he used up all his internal energy, her body seemed to become a bottomless pit, sucking his life force dry. No. Gong Yimo's tears fell from the corner of her eyes. Gong Dai, I don't want you to die. I don't want you to die. I beg you, royal sister. His voice was still cold, with a touch of gentleness. Since young, I have always hoped that one day, I would be able to shelter you from the wind and rain, eliminate all threats for you, and bear everything for you. I'm so happy I finally did it. No, don't say any more. Will you forget me? Gong Dai's voice gradually became older. I won't forget you even if I die. We have to be fine. Forget me, because I love you. Chapter 754. Long Changwuji worked with Kim Yoon to clean up the mess in Lotus Country. The remaining 5,000 people who were poisoned were all locked up. But they did not leave because Gong Yimo had been unconscious for a few days. How is she? Kim Yoon asked Si Wuyin anxiously. Her pulse is strong and calm. Her womb is deep and powerful. She should wake up soon, Si Wuyin said. Now that Gong Dai had such a thing happen to him, will she be sad when she wakes up? Kim Yoon and Si Wuyin looked at Long Changwuji. She would definitely be sad. Kim Yoon wiped Gong Yimo's face with a wet handkerchief. Poor Immerse. She has suffered so much. But now, this is the outcome. What outcome? Gong Yimo wanted to ask, but she could not speak. What about Gong Dai? Didn't he always appear in time when she needed him? She needed him now. She desperately needed him. Gong Yimo was in a daze. She remembered that his hair had turned white because she had sucked his life force. She also remembered that his foundation had been destroyed and he had become a cripple because he wanted her to reach the 9th level at all costs. Did it hurt to have all your meridians broken? She wanted to open her eyes, but at the last moment, Gong Dai covered her eyes. Royal sister, I don't want you to see me like this. Like what? I like you no matter what you look like. Royal sister, I am willing to do anything for you. So please don't feel guilty or sad. But I am no longer worthy of you. Don't go. Gong Yimo screamed and sat up. Si Wuyin and the rest looked over in surprise. Gong Yimo, how do you feel? Immerse, you are finally awake. Gong Yimo looked at them and then at her own hands. Power. Was this the power of the 9th transcendent state? He had transcended the mortal world and reached the pinnacle of the physical body. However, none of this was important. Where's Gong Dai? She suddenly asked, but the people in front of her looked at each other and didn't say anything. That feeling of unease became even more serious. Where's Gong Dai? Could it be that he really doesn't want me anymore? At the end, Gong Yimo suddenly burst into tears. So all of this was real, and she wasn't dreaming. Gong Dai had used all of his life force and strength as the price, allowing her to rush up to the 9th level and save her life. As for him, Gong Yimo's words made the men's hearts sour. Kim Yoon pursed his lips and said sadly, Immerse, he didn't abandon you. His voice was as gentle as possible, as if he was afraid of disturbing her. Then why isn't he here? Gong Yimo turned her head and looked at Kim Yoon, who was sitting by the bed. Her big eyes blinked and streaks of tears fell. Seeing that Long Changwuji and Si Wuyin had kept their mouths shut, Kim Yoon sighed. He doesn't have much time left. He said, he doesn't want to die in front of you. So he doesn't want me anymore? Gong Yimo clutched the blanket and asked softly. That panicked and helpless look was as if she was on the verge of breaking down and couldn't take any more agitation. He won't abandon you, Immerse. Things have already come to this. You have to be strong. He doesn't want me anymore. Gong Yimo didn't listen to him at all. She touched her stomach. He doesn't want the child anymore? Sob sob. He doesn't want us anymore. Immerse. Kim Yoon frowned. Did I do something wrong? Gong Yimo suddenly grabbed Kim Yoon's sleeve nervously and sobbed. Because I always run around. He doesn't want me anymore. No. Then it's because I always meddle in other people's business and want him to clean up after me. So he doesn't want me anymore. Sob sob. I won't do that anymore. Okay? I don't care about other people anymore. I only want him. I only want him. Immerse. Jin Yoon saw that her spirit was unstable, so he grabbed her and roared, causing her somewhat unfocused gaze to focus on him. That flickering look of fear made Kim Yoon's eyes flash with pain. Gong Dai, he won't abandon you. If he could, he wouldn't leave either. But he doesn't want you to watch him die. That's too cruel for you. How is it cruel? Gong Yimo flung his hand away and questioned loudly. You're not me, so what right do you have to make decisions for me? How is it cruel? I just want him. Even if he dies, he can only die in front of me. Finishing her words, she suddenly disappeared like the wind. Everyone was shocked, but they didn't know where she had gone. It was still Long Chengwuji who sighed. So this is the place of the outer fringe. Si Wuyin rubbed his forehead. This is great. No one can restrain her anymore. Now she's going to look for Gong Dai. But Gong Dai had left for a few days. How is she going to find him? Kim Yoon sighed. Perhaps there will be a miracle? No one could answer his question. Gong Dai's meridians were all broken and his life force had been sucked out. How could there be a miracle? Gong Yimo had reached the place of the outer fringe and had transcended the mortal world. But she was not a god and could not change her fate. On the other side, Gong Yimo looked around after coming out, but she didn't know where to go. At this moment, they were still in the Lotus Kingdom. But the Lotus Kingdom was well connected. Gong Dai. Which direction did he go? She couldn't calm down. In her panic, she couldn't sense Gong Dai's whereabouts. Finally, she gritted her teeth and headed in a certain direction. Gong Yimo had left, but Daiyu State suffered. After losing 2 pillars of support, Daiyu State was once again in turmoil. Many people were waiting for an opportunity to make a move. But the people left behind by Gong Dai were still there. For the time being, they wouldn't fall into chaos. But as time passed, it would be hard to say. Because of Gong Yimo's disappearance, even if Kim Yoon and the rest wanted to help her, they couldn't interfere in Daiyu State's affairs. In the end, they could only escort the poisoned people back to their home country. Then, they would provide assistance when Daiyu State needed it. Bai Shang and the 6 divisions were in charge of one area. Lo Qi had been leading people to search for the princess. Because His Highness didn't want to be found. He had seen His Highness's appearance and understood why His Highness wanted to leave. He also understood that leaving might be good for both of them. Time passed day by day. These 2 people seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. There was no news of them at all. After the new year, a month had passed. Gong Yimo's belly was already 7 months pregnant. But because she hadn't eaten properly, she didn't gain weight. Instead, she lost weight. As she lost weight, her belly became even bigger. She looked very haggard. Her heart was in a mess. She seemed to have found the wrong place. Although she clearly felt that this was the right direction, she couldn't find him. She clearly felt that he was always by her side. Finally, she knelt down in the snow. Although she was already at the stage of transformation, she still felt tired and hopeless. In the distance, the sound of firecrackers could be heard. Was it the new year? Or was it already the Lantern Festival? Everyone had someone accompanying them, but why was she alone? Chapter 755. The coldness of the snow pierced her bones, but she did not feel it at all. If that person did not feel sorry for her, she would not feel the pain. It was as if that person did not exist, and the child was not important. You could say that she was willful and ignorant, but she only wanted him. Only him. A gust of wind blew past, and there seemed to be a cold fragrance in the air. Gong Yimo suddenly became spirited, and she crazily dug through the snow. Her white and tender fingers were red from the cold. In the end, she actually found a piece of clothing, but it was only a piece of clothing. It was stained with blood, but the color had already faded. This was Gong Dai's clothing. Gong Yimo suddenly burst into tears. Bastard! You're right here. Why didn't you come out to see me? You must be alive, right? How did you die? Her cries were sorrowful, as if she wanted to cry out all the grievances of this month. I only want you to be alive. Can you please come out? I'll leave as soon as I see you alive. She knew the reason why Gong Dai did not want to see her. He was disfigured. He had lost all his martial arts and was about to die of old age. If she were in his shoes, she would also not appear in front of Gong Dai. But she really wanted to see him. Even if it was difficult, just once was enough. She said a lot of things intermittently and cried for a long time, but she was still the only one in this empty space. Sometimes, without someone to wipe your tears for you, tears became worthless. But she still could not hold back her tears. Gong Yimo did not expect that one day she would become such a crybaby. Just a little bit of stimulation would make her heart ache, and she would be in a constant state of anxiety. She hugged the clothing tightly and whispered to herself, "Can you come out? Recently, the child has been kicking me. My stomach hurts and my legs are swollen. It's so uncomfortable. My heart is empty. I feel that I won't be able to live until the day I give birth. Can you come out? Let's die together." In the dark, Gong Dai was trembling all over. He wanted to move a few times, but he was held down by a white-haired old man who looked like he was watching a good show. "I'm dying." Gong Yimo buried her head between her knees in sorrow. After crying for a while, she finally fell into a deep sleep. She had not slept for so long and had exhausted her inner strength over and over again. Only when her inner strength was exhausted could she sleep for a while. The moment Gong Yimo fell asleep, the white-haired old man finally released his suppression on Gong Dai. Gong Dai immediately embraced the small, ice-cold person. His royal sister was pregnant, but her weight was lighter. Thinking of this, Gong Dai felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He glared at the old man with bloodshot eyes. Back then, he was like a lamp that had run out of oil. He wanted to leave so that the royal sister wouldn't watch him die. When he was about to die, he met this old man. He didn't know what method the old man used to keep him alive, but he actually came back to life. The old man said that he had a way to restore his body's functions, but the prerequisite was that he had to listen to him. Gong Dai agreed, but who knew that the old man seemed to be deliberately teasing him and the royal sister. He kept leading the royal sister to chase after him and then pressed him down in the dark to watch. Several times, he saw Gong Yimo lying on a tree to rest or using the snow to quench her thirst. He couldn't wait to kill this old monster who had lived for who knows how many years. "You're too vicious. How many times have I told you to be calm? The wind and nature technique is not for you to use. You're still glaring at me. Do you want to get better? Why do you want me to watch her suffer?" This was the most unbearable thing for Gong Dai. Every time, he wanted to hold her in his arms so that she wouldn't be in so much pain. However, the old man wanted to torture them like this on purpose. Moreover, his strength was terrifyingly high. The royal sister was also at the transcendent realm, but she didn't even notice that they were beside her. Hearing Gong Dai's question, the old man chuckled. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. Gong Dai simply ignored him. He hugged Gong Yimo in his arms. At this time, he didn't have any internal energy, so he could only use his hands to rub her body to warm it up. Gong Dai was surprised to find that no matter how he tossed and turned, Gong Yimo didn't wake up. Instead, she was like a little kitten nestled in his arms, making him feel an indescribable heartache. As if he knew what Gong Dai was thinking, the old man explained. She was forcefully sent to the 9th level by you. Only by repeatedly exhausting her internal energy, like this can her foundation gradually stabilize and prevent her from going crazy. It wasn't clear if Gong Dai heard it, but his hands loosened and tightened. Once he hugged the person he loved, he couldn't let go anymore. Royal sister. Gong Dai wanted to reach out and touch her face, but before his hands could touch her, he stopped. His hands were clearly a pair of old man's hands. Not only that, his face was also full of wrinkles and his life was cut off. His current appearance was actually that of an old man. What right did he have to touch her like this? So even though he wanted to appear in front of royal sister 1,000 times after he was saved by the old man, but even if the old man didn't suppress him, would he really dare to appear in his current appearance? Can I really be cured? Gong Dai seemed to be asking someone else, but also seemed to be asking himself. He looked at the woman in his arms, and for the first time, he knew that he was so unwilling to die. Whether you can be cured or not, it all depends on your luck. The old man stroked his beard, looking like an immortal. Why do I want you to follow her? Why don't I let you appear? This is a kind of experience you will understand in the future. At this time, Gong Dai didn't want to listen anymore. He was wearing a mask. Only his eyes were as usual, staring at her face. Those black, jade-like eyes gradually dimmed. Suddenly, the old man said, "It's time to go. She's about to wake up." Gong Dai didn't want to leave. It wasn't easy to get a chance. He didn't want Royal Sister to continue looking for him like this. "Let's go." The old man suddenly frowned and urged. At this time, Gong Yimo seemed to hear something. No, it should be that she felt something, which made her frown deeply in her half-awake state. "Don't go." Her mouth overflowed with a gossamer voice. Her fingers moved as if she wanted to grab onto something. Her voice made it impossible for Gong Ju to leave her side. The old man suddenly snorted. "Do you want her to see your current appearance? A 70-year-old man, or a trash that will die at any time?" Gong Dai's hand tightly held her hand. He didn't want her to see him. He hoped that her mind would be filled with his past appearance, but he couldn't leave. Perhaps feeling his warmth, Gong Yimo actually opened her eyes, but her body was too tired. She even thought that she was dreaming. She saw a person hugging her. That person had a head full of white hair, wearing a mask, but he had the same eyes as Gong Dai. "Gong Dai!" She reached out to take it off. Gong Dai somewhat panicked and dodged. At this time, the old man suddenly made a move, causing Gong Yimo to fall asleep again. However, she didn't want to fall asleep. Her fingers had clearly touched his mask, clearly taking off his mask. But why couldn't she see his appearance clearly? That person retreated in defeat. Someone else said, "Your Highness is pregnant. You should focus on nurturing your baby. Don't interfere with the matters of the imperial court." Gong Yimo sneered. "Who said that women should stay at home to nurture the fetus? In terms of intelligence and strategy, in terms of outstanding achievements, who can surpass me here? If you can't, then shut up." That person wanted to refute, but in terms of achievements and virtue, no one could compare to Gong Yimo. Thinking of this, that person shut up. Gong Yimo's words were sharp. She raised her head and strode in. Only when she reached the front of the courtiers did she stop and look behind her. Her gorgeous palace dress twirled, emitting starlight. The golden crown accentuated her unparalleled beauty and peerless elegance. "Now, the regent is not here. I want to replace him as regent. Does anyone have any objections?" Her words caused a huge uproar. The older generation also began to disagree. A woman becoming regent? Was she going to be the empress? "Your Highness's words are wrong. Whether the regent is missing or dead is still uncertain. But what the princess means is that as long as the regent is not back, the princess will be regent. Then wouldn't our Dai state be ruled by a woman? What's the difference between the princess's actions and that of Empress Dowager Yuqi?" The person who said this was an elder of 2 dynasties. He was upright and righteous, but also famous for being pedantic. Gong Yimo smiled slightly. Although her face was still a bit pale, it was much better. "The regent will return. I only hope to protect Dai state before he returns. If you have any objections, why don't you give it a try?" She pursed her lips. "In terms of governance, strategy, martial arts, and ability, if anyone can surpass me in any of these, I will definitely abdicate. But if you want to use the fact that I'm a woman to deny it, I won't agree." "You." The old courtier thought for a while, and finally realized that no one could surpass her. Could it be that they had to listen to a woman? "If the princess wants to bring a child to govern from behind the curtain, you must be upright." Another old courtier said, "You're pregnant before marriage and have already shamed the imperial family. Now you want to bring this fatherless child to court? You're simply disregarding the ancestral teachings. Who said that the father is fatherless?" Gong Yimo suddenly became angry. She raised her brows. "This consort is negotiating nicely with you. Do you think this consort is a pushover?" As soon as she finished speaking, a layer of frost began to form under her feet. Then, the frost spread in all directions as if it had a life of its own. When the courtiers saw this, they retreated in a panic. Fortunately, Gong Yimo only wanted to teach them a lesson and didn't directly freeze them. However, they were still scared out of their wits. She swept her sharp gaze across the court. I'm the crown princess personally conferred by Imperial Father. My status is high. Even if I were to push the young emperor down and ascend to the throne, it would still be in accordance with Imperial Father's wishes. Since ancient times, there has never been a female emperor. However, it was never said that there would never be one. Gong Yimo's words made them even more frightened. Their great you was really powerful. One forced them to be the regent, while the other directly told them that she was the crown princess. Gong Yimo's words made them even more frightened. But this wasn't the end. Imperial Father personally decreed that I'm betrothed to the regent. The child in my stomach is naturally his. Whoever dares to say that the father is fatherless, I'll kill his entire family. Every word of this sentence seemed to strike the hearts of the courtiers. They had almost forgotten that Gong Yimo had been betrothed by the late emperor. I have the absolute right to command the troops in the regent's hands. If you have any ideas, it's best to abandon them. I'm not necessarily easier to talk to than the regent. This was considered a threat. Lastly, I'm only going to be the regent for the time being. When the regent returns, I'll return it. If you have any objections, it's not like I can't carry out a bloodbath. In any case, at the beginning of a prosperous era, there will always be deaths. Her words pressured the courtiers so much that they couldn't breathe. Suddenly, the young emperor, who had been scared silly, burst into tears. Only then did the courtiers wake up from their daze. They looked at Gong Yimo, who was above them, and suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Why aren't you kneeling? With one command, everyone subconsciously knelt down. Long live the princess! Gong Yimo curled her lips. Looking at the courtiers, she secretly decided that she had to pull herself together. She had to wait for Gong Dai's return. The old monster beside him had a lot of good things in his hands. Moreover, under his treatment, his vitality that had clearly been cut off was gradually regenerating. Therefore, he was willing to lie low. If this old man could really let him recover and give him a chance to return to Royal Sister's side, he was willing to do anything. Thinking of this, he looked at Gong Yimo's peaceful sleeping face and couldn't help but gently kiss her forehead in front of the old man through the mask. Wait for me. I also miss you very, very much. I've always been by your side. Suddenly, he was deeply in love and couldn't extricate himself. Royal Sister, you have to believe that I have the determination to stay by your side until we grow old. Gong Yimo suddenly wrinkled her nose. She looked so cute. Gong Dai couldn't help but laugh. The old man was almost amazed. For so long, he had never heard Gong Dai laugh. He thought that Gong Dai's face was stiff from old age. Gong Dai carried her and walked towards the bed. Although he didn't practice martial arts, he had been training for many years and his physical strength was still there. He easily carried Gong Yimo. He even weighed her and frowned. He felt that she was lighter again. He sighed in his heart. Although he didn't know why the old monster didn't want them to meet during this period of time, Gong Dai felt that he was indeed helping them. In addition, he hadn't fully recovered yet. He could only endure. However, he wouldn't really leave no trace. In the past, he knew that he would definitely die. But now, he wanted to keep Royal Sister's heart with him. She was still his. From head to toe, from inside to outside, she was his. Therefore, after placing Gong Yimo on the bed, Gong Dai was a little mischievous. He switched the ring from her left hand to her right hand. The old man didn't seem to notice and only urged, "Go, go. You don't want her to see your old face, right?" Gong Dai subconsciously touched the mask. Looking at her peaceful sleeping face, his heart became more anxious. He didn't want to leave. He missed her so much. How could one look be enough? The old man harumphed twice. Looks like you still don't understand. Come back when you understand. Saying that, he directly grabbed Gong Dai and left. The candlelight flickered, and it was as if nothing had happened. However, Gong Yimo still slept exceptionally well. The next day, Gong Yimo discovered that the ring was different. She couldn't help but think deeply. Now, to be able to come to her side while she was unaware, it must be those old monsters who hadn't appeared. But why would Gong Ju want to be with them? Or could it be that they were saving Gong Dai? Gong Yimo's heart thumped wildly. She knew very well that she had sucked Gong Dai's life force dry. If it wasn't for those old monsters who had lived for a long time, no one would know how to extend their life. Thinking of this, she suddenly became excited. If Gong Dai could really live, then she could wait as long as she wanted. She had already thought about it. That mask wasn't an illusion. Gong Dai was still disfigured and had lost all his martial arts. But it didn't matter. As long as he was alive, she didn't care. As she thought about it, it was already very late when Gong Yimo woke up. The morning court was already over, and a large number of memorials were sent to Gong Yimo. Her face fell, but her heart was filled with hope. Do your best. Gong Dai would definitely return to her side. Thinking of this, she ate something and excitedly went to review the memorials. But when she saw one of the memorials, she was slightly surprised. Isn't this way, nation? They actually crossed the sea to pay a visit? Interesting, interesting. After reading it, she directly approved it and put it aside. It was just a small country, and now it was so backward that it wasn't worth mentioning. On the contrary, her ship had already been built and was just waiting for the opportunity to set sail. Gong Yimo sighed in her heart. This ship was originally meant for Imperial Father. She didn't expect that so many things would happen in such a short period of time. But when Gong Dai returned, she could take the ship with him to Jiangnan. The women of Jiangnan were as beautiful as a painting. She had long wanted to see them. Moreover, she could go out to sea and see further places. Therefore, she waved her hand and specially set up a sea department. But she didn't expect that this casual action of hers would shock outsiders. Chapter 758. The group of people from one nation who had come to visit were originally very pleased with themselves. Decades ago, some people from one nation had accidentally come to Daiyu State due to a storm at sea. When they returned, they described Daiyu State as if it was the best in the world, causing many people to be dissatisfied with them. So what if they were rich? Did Daiyu State have a boat that could cross the sea? They could cross the sea to come here, but could the people here cross the sea? However, when they reached the shore, they were shocked by the scene in front of them. Everything in front of them was much more prosperous than what the person from before had said. There were 7 people in the group, but one of them could speak the mainland language. He was the son of the previous one nation who came to Daiyu State. He was obsessed with everything in front of him. It turned out that there was an even bigger world beyond the sea. As soon as they appeared, they attracted the attention of the people at the beach. In the end, the local county head sent people to inquire and was shocked when he found out that they were from the other side of the sea. Fortunately, one of them could speak 2 languages. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how to communicate. The county head quickly reported this matter to the higher-ups in the capital. Gong Yimo waved her hand and allowed them to have an audience. Only then did the 7 people set off for the center of Daiyu State. When they reached the shore, they thought that it was the most prosperous place in Daiyu State. Who knew that it was just a small town at the border? The closer they got to the capital, the more amazed they were. The more exquisite the houses were, the neat limestone roads, and the complete sewer and water system made them feel like they were in heaven. Although others couldn't understand what they were saying, they kept exclaiming the same thing. Moreover, they were curious about everything and wanted to touch everything. They had completely forgotten their previous disdainful attitude. Everything in front of them was so novel that they couldn't pretend to be uninterested even if they wanted to. Especially when they put on the exquisite silk, they couldn't bear to take it off. How could there be such a comfortable material? And it was man-made? It was simply uncanny workmanship. When they arrived at the capital, they were already shocked to the point of numbness. The tall city gate tower made people feel a sense of inferiority. The uniform guards and the clear moat made their hands and feet bound. Not only did they not dare to make too much noise, but they also only dared to look at everything with their eyes. They didn't dare to touch anything. The air was filled with the aura of a large country. Before they entered the palace, they were taken to be trained in etiquette for 7 days. Daiyu State was a country that valued etiquette, but it wasn't too burdensome. They paid more attention to a person's bearing, but this couldn't be cultivated in a few days. Gong Yimou didn't treat their visit to the palace as a serious matter. So much so that the court officials were influenced by Gong Yimou and didn't take the foreign team that crossed the sea seriously. After the imperial court, Gong Yimou heard that someone had come to visit her. She finally remembered this matter, so she casually called for an audience. She didn't stick to a pattern when she looked at problems. Every time, she could solve problems from an unexpected angle. It was as if she already had a deep understanding. Therefore, after a month or two, the court officials became well-behaved. Even the backbone of the Qing dynasty had a feeling that it wouldn't be so hard to accept if Gong Yimou was really in charge of the Dayu state. In ancient times, the ancestors once said, "Choose the virtuous and capable," but they didn't say that they would choose the male or the female. Who was more virtuous and capable than Gong Yimou? It could only be said that Gong Yimou was worthy of teaching a leader like the Prince Regent. Therefore, with this strange recognition, Gong Yimou became the Empress of Dayu State. Her princess court dress was as majestic as a dragon's robe. The 7 people from one nation walked into the palace trembling with fear. The white marble floor was spotless. They seemed to feel that they didn't deserve to step on it. When they arrived at Jiaoyang Hall, they realized what it meant to be extravagant. The floor was actually paved with gold bricks. Dayu State was actually such a rich country? At this time, they trembled and knelt on the ground. They didn't dare to raise their heads. They didn't know that this was only a side hall. They only knew that everything around them was indescribably expensive. This made them feel even more uneasy. They didn't know where to put their hands and feet. Gong Yimou was quite curious about them. In the past month, she knew that Gong Dai was still alive. Her heart had calmed down a lot, and her face had finally gained some weight. At this time, she was sitting in the seat of honor with a big belly. However, she didn't have the bloated feeling of a pregnant woman. She only had an indescribable noble air and an exquisite appearance that made people unable to take their eyes off her. Only her bulging belly proved that she was going to give birth in half a month. "Greetings, Your Highness." They knew the meaning of princess, but mistakenly thought that the princess was the emperor, the highest ruler of this country. "You may dispense with the formalities. Have a seat." A faint female voice sounded. It was as beautiful as pearls and jade. However, it made them widen their eyes in shock. They forgot about their etiquette and raised their heads subconsciously. The ruler of Dayu State was a woman. It was no wonder they were so surprised. In their country, the status of women was very low. However, the ruler of this magnificent country in their eyes was actually a woman. How could they not be surprised? "How dare you?" The head eunuch frowned and shouted. Although they didn't know what "how dare" meant, they all lowered their heads subconsciously. They almost forgot that without the permission of the ruler, they couldn't raise their heads and stare at each other. However, even if they lowered their heads, their trembling bodies couldn't hide the shock in their hearts. Gong Yimou couldn't help but laugh. "Don't be so nervous. Don't you have someone who understands the mainland's language? Have a seat." The only person who understood the mainland's language was a youth. When he heard Gong Yimou call him, he was so excited that he couldn't control himself. He whispered to his companion. When his companion heard this, he bowed again and spoke in poor Dayu State's language. "Thank you, Your Highness." Then, he got up and sat to the side. Gong Yimou knew that the oldest person in this group was a Japanese official. However, those people couldn't understand her, so she spoke directly to the youth. "What's your name?" That voice was filled with supreme nobility. The youth was flattered. He lowered his head and said with a red face, My name is Li Yu. My father admired the mainland's culture and gave me this name." When he first came ashore, he couldn't even speak properly. Now that he could express himself so clearly, Gong Yimou didn't care about his respectful words. "Raise your head." Chapter 759. Li Yu was stunned, but he still raised his head subconsciously. Then, he was stunned. Li Yu couldn't be blamed. Although their aesthetic standards were different, people's fondness for beauty was actually the same. Gong Yimou's appearance had already gathered all of Li Yu's fantasies of a goddess in his mind and acted out her beauty to the extreme. He didn't know how to describe her beauty. The most direct way to describe it was that her appearance was so beautiful that it made people's hearts palpitate. Gong Yimo glanced at this person lazily. He was better looking than the others, and just like his name, his face was like jade. It was just that he was still young and looked too immature, and he wasn't very tall. It was no wonder. The average height of the men in Dayu State was considered tall. This was because generations of people had been living better and better. On the other hand, Wei Nation was poor, so it was normal for people to be short. What do you want to do by coming here? This question really stumped him. When they came, the adults in their group had a lot of ideas, but they were all unrealistic. For example, if the people here were stupid, they would use their intelligence to seize this place. If they weren't stupid and were rich, they would think of ways to gain more benefits before going back to think of other ways. In short, according to the description left behind by Li Yu's father, their impression of Dayu State had always been that it was rich, kind, simple, and hospitable. In other words, weren't they just stupid, rich, and easy to bully? However, after arriving at Dayu State, Li Yu never heard the adults mention these things again. That was right. The size of Dayu State was beyond their imagination. Dayu State didn't lack smart people. Otherwise, it wouldn't have developed so quickly. Dayu State was rich, kind, simple, and hospitable. However, from the sturdy city walls to the orderly guards, it was clear that the people of Dayu State weren't easy to bully. Their passion and tolerance were all built on the foundation of their great strength. Therefore, he spoke to the point. We want to learn from Dayu State. Dayu State is very good and rich, but our country is very poor. Li Yu didn't have many tricks up his sleeve. He just expressed his most intuitive feelings. Gong Yimo covered her mouth and chuckled. When she laughed, everyone couldn't help but look over and secretly peek. First, he was dazzled by her smile. Then, he realized in hindsight that the person in charge of Dayu seemed to be pregnant. This was too shocking. There were so many strong and smart men in Dayu State. Why would they listen to a pregnant woman? Could it be that her child was very important? These neon people kept imagining, but then they heard Gong Yimo ask with a smile. It's fine if you want to learn, but what are you going to use in exchange? Gong Yimo's tone was calm, but the arrogance was obvious. That casual attitude reflected the absolute majesty of a big country. Moreover, they did not take them seriously at all. Li Yu gritted his teeth. In fact, he didn't know what his country had that was worth exchanging for, because Dayu State was far superior to them in every aspect. Please wait a moment, Your Highness. He bowed to Gong Yimo, and then started to discuss with his companions. His companions exclaimed and frowned. No one knew what they were talking about. The palace servant couldn't stand it and motioned to Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo waved her hand casually, indicating that they didn't need to care. If these people had any bad intentions, she could crush them with a finger. After they finished discussing, Li Yu's expression turned ugly. He relayed the leader's words. Your Highness, the leader thinks that Dayu State is so prosperous, but we are so poor. The Dayu State should help us. This way, when we become strong, we can repay the Dayu State. Gong Yimo chuckled. The leader of the neon people glared at Li Yu, thinking that he didn't express himself clearly. In fact, Li Qing had only expressed his thoughts concisely. He had just left out the tactful parts. Your reason is not valid. Dayu State doesn't need anyone's help to develop. Why should we waste time on unnecessary diplomacy? Li Yu felt that the princess was right. They didn't need it at all. At this time, the leader said something to Li Yu. Li Yu hesitated for a while, but still decided to repeat it. Everyone needs friends, and so does a country. We will definitely be your loyal friends. No, loyal friends are not your friends, but your subordinates. Gong Yimo replied lazily, causing Li Yu's expression to change. Dayu State has 17 subordinate countries. They are all subordinates of Dayu State and are subjects of Dayu State. Therefore, Dayu State only wants subordinates, not friends. In other words, not everyone can become friends with Dayu State. Do you understand? Her words were very rude, but what did it matter? The two sides weren't even on equal footing. Why should they be treated equally? Sure enough, after Li Yu repeated it, Those people didn't dare to say anything. Gong Yimo was right. In the end, he said something, and Li Yu repeated it. I thought Dai Yu State hated generosity. Was he implying that Gong Yimo was stingy? Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows slightly. Dai Yu State is very generous to its citizens. What she meant was, as a small foreign country, why should they be generous to you? In the end, the leader rolled his eyes, and the group began to discuss in low voices again. Gong Yimo saw that Li Yu's expression was somewhat reluctant. She smiled and let them continue their discussion. In the end, Li Yu's face was pale, but he still said it. Our country is willing to submit to Dai Yu State. We hope to receive help from Dai Yu State. Gong Yimo smiled. How do we submit? Li Yu paused. He felt that he had nowhere to hide under her gaze. Our country's emperor will personally come here and sign a letter of credence with Dai Yu State. He will be their emperor forever. Gong Yimo smiled. The other party had a good idea. They thought that Dai Yu State didn't have a boat that could cross the sea. Even if they lied, Dai Yu State wouldn't be able to expose them. This way, they could find someone to impersonate the emperor and sign a fake document. Then, they could cheat Dai Yu State of their technology. Even if they were discovered in the future, they could say that they didn't do it. Someone had impersonated the Japanese to cheat Dai Yu State. This was truly a shameless plan. Seeing that Gong Yimo didn't say anything, the bearded leader forced Li Yu to speak again. If Dai Yu State doesn't trust us, we can send the emperor's son to Dai Yu State to study. What he meant was that he could be a hostage. Gong Yimo narrowed her eyes and suddenly said something that seemed unrelated. You all came from afar and haven't had a good tour, right? It won't be too late to talk about this after you have toured Dai Yu State's capital city. As she spoke, she waved her hand and asked the people to send the guests out. After all, this was Dai Yu State's territory. These people were quite obedient and left obediently. Gong Yimo called a palace servant forward and told him with a smile which places didn't need to be visited and which places had to be visited. The palace maids allowed them to discuss. After showing them around the official kiln, they were brought to the imperial tea service the next day. This was the largest tea house in the capital. Good teas from all over the world would be sent here for selection. The best teas would be sent to the imperial palace, while the rest would be auctioned in the city. Some of the best teas were often priceless. Things like tea, when paired with porcelain, were so mesmerizing. The palace maids invited them to taste the tea and let the tea maids perform the tea ceremony. The beautiful steam seemed to be able to evaporate into a landscape painting. It made these people feel that they were not drinking tea, but were drinking nobility. In Li Yu's impression, tea was bitter. His father had imitated it before, but the taste was not complimentary. However, this tea was fragrant in the mouth and sweet in the throat. There was a hint of bitterness at both ends of the tongue. It was really the best in the world. So this was tea. Moreover, there was more than one type of tea. Each type had its own merits, and they were all the best teas. Therefore, even people like them who did not know anything about tea could taste its beauty. Tokugawa's eyes lit up. He knew that such elegant things were the favorite of the aristocrats. They would go crazy for this. The palace maids did not bring them here for too long. Occasionally, when Li Yu's companions asked the palace maids, he would not say much. Seeing that the palace maids were bringing them away, the few people behind were obviously reluctant to leave. They wanted to know how to make tea. It did not seem complicated. However, they still followed because they wanted to know what other good things Dai Yu State had that they had to take away. Sir, Li Yu did not know how to address the palace maids, so he could only call them that. The head of the palace maids glanced at him and asked with a smile, "Honored guest, do you have any questions?" Li Yu was a little embarrassed. "What does your highness mean? Why do you want us to visit this place?" The palace maid smiled meaningfully. He did not dare to say that this was a prank by the princess, so he only said, "Are you all having fun?" Li Yu nodded. Dai Yu State is very beautiful and very powerful. The palace maid smiled and said, "Then let's continue. There are even better things ahead." With that said, they led the way. Seeing that the palace maids had left, Tokugawa hurriedly asked Li Yu, What did he say? Liu opened his mouth and finally sighed. He said that there are even better things ahead. Tokugawa's eyes lit up when he heard that. Was there anything better than silk, porcelain, and tea? The few of them muttered for a while, showing unprecedented excitement. Furthermore, Tokugawa repeatedly warned Liu not to reveal their plan. Whether the country could become as powerful as Daiyu State would depend on them. Liu nodded, but he became even more silent. The palace maids brought them to the Myriad Treasure Tower. The Myriad Treasure Tower gathered the best from the 4 countries. All kinds of rare treasures could be seen there. Moreover, a large-scale auction would be held every year. The money from the auction would be used to fill the national treasury. This was all the princess' idea. When the group arrived at the Myriad Treasure Tower, they were mesmerized by the pearls and precious treasures in front of them. The Myriad Treasure Tower was in the shape of a tall tower, and in the tower, the treasures were arranged side by side, competing with each other for glory. It made one's heart tremble. Every treasure was separated by glass so that people could see it clearly, but they couldn't touch it. The neon people screamed when they saw the glass. The palace maids snickered behind their backs. The Myriad Treasure Tower had many good things, but the real good things were all in the national treasury. Here, it was merely the leftovers that were screened out. It was a pity that the other party did not understand and was almost drooling. After all, the impact of so many treasures piled up together was not an ordinary kind of great. Ambition suddenly arose in Tokugawa's heart. It would be great if they could annex Daiyu State. Then, all these treasures would be theirs. All of them. However, he could not show it now. He had decided to pretend to submit first, then slowly encroach on Daiyu State, turning Daiyu State into their territory. Only they deserved to enjoy these good things. How could the palace maids not see the ambition in his eyes? Therefore, he sneered and opened a hidden buckle on a shelf at the side, casually taking out a sword. Seeing that the palace maids suddenly took out a sword, Tokugawa and the others immediately became alert. They were surrounded by people from Daiyu State. What were they doing? Chapter 761. The eunuch only smiled. Don't be so nervous. I just wanted to show you Daiyu State's forging techniques. This is something that can't be found anywhere else. This time, Tokugawa also looked over. After all, a country's weapon represented the country's combat strength. When everyone saw the saber, they were attracted by its gorgeous appearance. It was entirely white, but there was a bronze net brand on it. It added an indescribable simplicity and exquisiteness. Liu liked it the most. His family also had a sword, but it paled in comparison to this. However, it was his father's favorite sword. Tokugawa heaved a sigh of relief. This sword was too exquisite. One look, and he could tell that it wasn't a weapon meant for killing. If Daiyu State's weapons were as flashy as this, then... But in the next second, his eyes widened. He saw the eunuch pluck a strand of hair from his head and blow it on the blade. The blade buzzed, and the strand of hair was immediately cut in half. Seeing the shock, fear, and unwillingness in everyone's eyes, the eunuch smiled in satisfaction and put the sword back. Tokugawa still had a sliver of hope in his heart. He asked Liu, "Does Daiyu State have many treasured swords like this?" The eunuch looked up and raised his eyebrows. Is this considered a treasured sword? He laughed sarcastically. In Daiyu State, only swords that can cut through iron like mud are treasured swords. Liu was shocked. In his mind, iron was already an extremely hard object. How could there be something that could cut through iron? When Tokugawa and the rest heard Liu's words, their eyes flashed with fear, but they quickly calmed down. Can you bring us to the forging area to take a look? They were clearly trying to steal the skills. The eunuch frowned in disdain. You are all distinguished guests. That place is dirty and hot. It's not suitable for you to go. Tokugawa wanted to insist, but the eunuch laughed. I wanted to bring you to the shipyard, but you don't seem to want to go? Shipyard. Tokugawa's eyes flashed with gloom. They should go to the shipyard. It was a good opportunity to see how far behind Daiyu State's ships were to ensure the success of their plan. Hence, Everyone stopped arguing about the weapon and headed to the shipyard. Back when the Crown Prince was still alive, the shipyard was built in order to build a ship that suited the princess's needs. It made one's mind tremble the moment they entered. Tokugawa looked around and realized that there were indeed only a few small and medium-sized boats here. He felt much more relaxed. Such a big shipyard, but the number of ships that were produced was very small. Although the ships were beautifully made, could they be used for war? Tokugawa didn't realize that he was already thinking about war. At this moment, a cheer came from outside. "He's in the water. It's in the water." Hearing the commotion, the palace servant smiled and led the neon people through the shipyard to the soaring Dragon River. When they came out from the other side of the shipyard, the neon people were all stunned. He couldn't say another word. Boat. It was an incomparably large ship. And it wasn't just one search. A total of 7 ships. One of them was already in the water. The ship had 3 levels, and each level was exquisite. The bow of the ship was raised high, showing off its domineering aura. The neon people had so many ships, so how could they not tell that this ship was not only large, but also capable of sailing? At this moment, the ship that had already entered the water was like a gigantic dragon. After it entered the water, it swayed slightly before quickly stabilizing. From its draft, it was unbelievable that such a large ship was so light. Could it be that the gods were helping the Dayu state? How could a human have such skills? With a last glimmer of hope, Tokugawa asked in a trembling voice, "Can these ships sail?" Only then did Liu snap out of his daze and ask the palace servant this question. Then, he saw mockery in the palace servant's eyes. These ships were originally used by the princess to sail. The princess said that there are 7 continents in this world. With these ships, we can go to any continent. It was like a bolt from the blue. Tokugawa and the rest didn't look too good. They finally understood that the woman had guessed their plan from the beginning, but she didn't expose them to save their dignity. She only let them out to take a look so that these frogs at the bottom of the well would understand that there was always someone better than them. Tokugawa and the rest were dispirited, but Liu's eyes were filled with infatuation. He really liked these ships. What was the silvery white color on the ships? Was it iron? How were they joined together? Wouldn't they rust? Just like that, the group finished their tour with different thoughts. No one said a word during the tour. In the evening, it started to rain. It was said that spring rain was as precious as oil. The season when all living things were recovering always had a different kind of beauty. Gong Yimo stood at the entrance of the palace, looking at the palace in the misty rain. Her hand was on her stomach, as if she was a wife waiting for her husband to return. Under the warm light, a palace servant quietly approached her. "Princess, the weather is still cold. Put on some clothes?" Gong Yimo acted as if she didn't hear him. "Do you think Gong Dai will come back?" There was a hint of carelessness in her tone. She was rarely so uncertain and hesitant. She had always been firm and strong. This kind of her had brought a lot of trouble to Gong Dai in the past, right? How could the palace servant say anything else? "He will come back, princess. His Highness can't bear to part with you." The sky darkened, making the rain even more lingering. In the dark, there was a person standing there. He had been in the rain for a long time. He was wearing a mask, so his face couldn't be seen clearly. However, his hair was mixed with black and white, and he didn't look young. "Why do you keep letting me look at her, but not go near her?" Gong Dai's voice was cold, but more than that, there was a faint sadness. "That's because even I am unable to prolong your life." An old man suddenly appeared. He was holding a wine bottle in his hand, his cheeks red. "I can only extend your life, but I can't really extend your life. If you want to live, you have to break through to the 9th level." Gong Dai sneered, "All my meridians are broken, and I have lost all my inner strength. I'm already a cripple. You've been playing with me all this time." The old man narrowed his eyes. "Calm down. You don't understand. Wind and nature martial arts doesn't only require talent and hard work. It also requires comprehension. That little girl's comprehension is very good. You are still lacking a little." Don't tell me that as long as I have enough comprehension, I can still reconstruct my meridians and return to the 8th level, and then break through to the 9th level? Gong Dai's tone was mocking. Why not? The old man smiled. Once you understand, success will follow naturally. Only when you truly understand the essence of wind and nature can you extend your life and continue living. The old man looked like a charlatan, as if he wasn't teaching martial arts, but Tao. But what does this have to do with not letting us meet? I can't say. The old man revealed a hateful smile. As long as you don't recover, you can't appear. Of course, if you appear and let her watch you die, then pretend I didn't say anything. Chapter 762. Since the old man had said so, Gong Dai could only bear with it. No matter what, as long as it was possible, he wanted to spend the rest of his life with his royal sister. Besides, if he could, he didn't want to appear as a cripple. Could he really reach the 9th level in his current state? If he couldn't, the old man wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to treat him. In his current state, if he didn't take medicine for a day, he would age rapidly. But now, Gong Ju touched his face through the mask. At this time, he had returned to his 40s appearance. His hair was half black and half white. If he could really break through the 9th layer, would his hair turn completely black? As he thought about it, he began to look forward to it. But there were always accidents. The next day, after morning court, Gong Yimo felt a little dizzy. She didn't mind and continued to head to her bedchamber. Then she heard the palace servants say that the group of Japanese people wanted to see her. Gong Yimo didn't want to see them at first, but she felt that it would be better to send them away as soon as possible. So, she summoned them. At first, they were very respectful and thanked the Dayu state for their hospitality. They were so happy that they forgot their home. But slowly, Liu began to stutter and didn't know how to pass on their lord's words. Gong Yimo narrowed her eyes. What is it? There's no harm in saying it. Tokugawa signaled with his eyes for Liu to speak. Only then did Liu stutter. The princess said that if we want to receive help from the Dayu state, we must become a vassal state of the Dayu state. But our country isn't willing to become a vassal state. Gong Yimo nodded. Then there's nothing more to say. When you leave, I will send you a generous gift. So, but that doesn't mean we don't have a chance to work together. Liu stuttered, interrupting her. Gong Yimo was a little interested now. She raised her brows and looked at him and Tokugawa, who had long planned this. What kind of cooperation? Let's hear it. Liu felt that something was wrong, but Tokugawa glared at him, so he could only say it. We heard that the princess's husband is missing, and most likely dead. With just one sentence, Gong Yimo narrowed her eyes. She was so angry that she laughed. So, under her gaze, Liu felt immense pressure. Not only him, but everyone present felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. The palace servants broke out in cold sweat. The prince was the princess's reverse scale. Weren't these people courting death? He could only hope that they wouldn't say anything terrible to avoid harming the innocent. Under immense pressure, Liu continued to speak. Between our two countries, it's still possible to have a marriage alliance. Seeing that Gong Yimo didn't say anything, Liu decided to finish everything in one breath. Our country also has princes. If the princess agrees, we will send a capable prince to marry the princess. The princess doesn't need to give him power, just give him an official position. Furthermore, our prince won't despise the princess for losing her chastity and having a child. It's just that if the princess and our prince get pregnant in the future, the child will be the first wife. It turned out that Gong Yimo couldn't help but break the delicate heater in her hand. Her smile didn't change, but the murderous aura coming from her was enough to make Liu so scared that he wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy. In fact, Liu really knelt down. Not only him, but the other 6 people and all the servants in the room also knelt down. Tokugawa didn't understand. They were obviously very sincere. She was a woman with a child. Which noble man would be willing to marry her? They said that they couldn't find a real prince when they went back. They could only find an abandoned son from another noble family because a real prince wouldn't marry an unchaste woman with a child. However, they would give that person the title of a prince. So, what else was she dissatisfied with? Gong Yimo suddenly laughed softly. That deep laughter made people's scalps tingle. You guys are really good. In such a short time, you actually found out everything about me. You even know what's a concubine. Let me guess, you want to find an abandoned son to marry me? Li Yu's eyes widened. He didn't know how Gong Yimo was able to guess it. Gong Yimo understood when she saw his face. She laughed deeply. Then let me guess again. You want to obtain countless benefits from Daiyu state through marriage. Then, you secretly support that abandoned son and let him become an official in Daiyu state, slowly encroaching on the political power? Li Yu's face turned pale because she had guessed it perfectly. He could still remember the ferocious and excited expression on Tokugawa's face when he said the same thing last night. Gong Yimo was so angry that she was gritting her teeth. You guys want me to support that abandoned son's child to become emperor? Then, you guys can effortlessly take over Daiyu state's territory? Aren't you guys being a bit too whimsical? Li Yu didn't know what to say anymore. He also didn't know how the other party was so smart to be able to guess what they were thinking so easily. Gong Yimo's eyes darkened. In the end, she laughed mockingly. You want benefits, you want power, and in the end, you want the highest position in Daiyu state. Who gave you the courage to talk about cooperation with me? Shouldn't there be a limit to how shameless you can be? From beginning to end, I didn't see anything that would benefit Daiyu state. I'd be crazy if I wanted to compensate you guys along with the state. You guys aren't even fit to carry my shoes. Li Yu hurriedly translated for them. Moreover, he actually felt that the princess was right. Although Tokugawa had said over and over again last night that no noble would marry an unchaste woman, Li Yu felt that if this princess was willing, there would be a line of nobles lining up for her to choose from. She was different from their country's women who had lost their virginity and could only die. However, Tokugawa was stunned. This was different from what he had imagined. Gong Yimo had already lost her appetite. She waved her hand. Someone come. Escort them away. I don't want to see them again. Yes. Tokugawa panicked when he saw people coming to pull them away. He hadn't gotten anything yet. Princess, you can't be like this. Our prince is willing to marry you. What are you still not satisfied with? Li Yu didn't want to translate his words, but Gong Yimo was already staring at him. Gong Yimo's face turned pale when she heard Li Yu's words. How could there be such a shameless person? Don't worry. I don't have to worry about not being able to marry. When Tokugawa heard this, he saw that the situation was hopeless. His expression subconsciously turned fierce. Princess, I clearly had good intentions. You caused the death of your husband and even monopolized power. Who would dare to marry a woman like you? Could it be that you're still waiting for your husband to come back? He won't be coming back. Li Yu didn't dare to translate, but Gong Yimo forced him to say it. After hearing it, her aura rose. She was so angry that she felt her vision darken. However, before she could get angry at them, she suddenly felt a pain in her stomach. Chapter 763. The pain came quickly and fiercely. Gong Yimo was caught off guard. She leaned back and knocked over the tea table. Large beads of cold sweat flowed out. Gong Yimo's face was pale. She blacked out and fell to the ground. At the last moment, she was still wondering why her body was so weak. She also wondered if she would hurt the baby if she fell from this angle. However, her worries were unnecessary because she fell into a familiar embrace. The other party's heart was beating fast and fiercely, and his voice was trembling. Royal sister. The old man looked at his hand in puzzlement. He couldn't figure out how a person without martial arts could break through his nine heavens shield and rush out. However, when he saw the two of them cuddling together, he smiled and sighed. Really, he wanted to separate the two of them for a while longer. The more they missed each other, the longer it would be. Only then could they slowly appreciate each other's goodness and love each other until they grew old. The old man would never admit that he did it on purpose because he was alone. He did it for their own good. The palace servants were immediately alarmed. This man who suddenly appeared and dared to hug the princess could only be a prince. The 7 neon people were already frightened by the sudden change. Later, they were stunned by the man who seemed to appear out of thin air. Could it be that this was the legendary husband of Her Royal Highness, whose fate was unknown? Gongju saw the ugly expression on Gong Yimo's face, so he quickly ordered, "Quickly call for an imperial physician. Tell the maidservant to be on standby. Also, prepare a decoction to restore qi and calm the nerves." As soon as Gong Dai spoke, everyone moved spontaneously. In this way, the people kneeling on the ground seemed even more out of place. They couldn't help but shrink back. However, it was useless to hide. Gong Dai had already heard their conversation in the dark. How dare they? She actually kept saying that no one wanted her imperial sister, and kept saying that she wanted to explain her marriage to her. When he heard that, he was so angry that he wanted to tear these bastards apart. However, at this time, he was holding the princess in his arms and had no time to deal with them. Moreover, Royal Sister was still angry. How could he let them die so easily? Therefore, he said coldly, "Drag them away and put them to death row." Yes. When the guards outside heard Gong Dai's voice, they responded reflexively. When they came in, Gong Dai had already disappeared with Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo grabbed his hand tightly. Even though she was unconscious, she still seemed to have consciousness. She knew who she was grabbing and refused to let go. In fact, with her pale face, even if he hit her, Gong Dai wouldn't leave, let alone anything else. Soon, the imperial physician arrived. After carefully taking the pulse, he secretly glanced at the Prince Regent's face. Although he was wearing a mask, his aura was clearly that of the regent's return. How scary. They hadn't heard any news at all. How is it? Gong Dai frowned. Replying to your highness, the princess's qi and blood only attacked her heart and affected the fetus. She's not about to give birth. Moreover, the princess's body is different from ordinary people, so she's fine now. Gong Dai also knew that she should be fine. She was unconscious because her body was repairing itself. Because after she cried out in pain at the beginning, she grabbed his hand and fell into a deep sleep. Gong Dai sighed in relief and let everyone leave. It was good that she wasn't about to give birth. He felt that a full-term child would be healthier. Thinking of this, Gong Dai touched Gong Yimo's big belly. It was hard and warm. His heart was suddenly filled with a strange feeling. Would such a big belly be heavy? Royal Sister must be very tired every day. In fact, he had long wanted to touch her belly, but he never had the chance. Inside, there was their child. After calming down, Gong Dai thought of the old man. He was surprised that he actually broke through the old man's defense. He tried to use his internal energy, but it didn't recover. Then just now, how did he break through the air barrier? Wind and nature, was it really so magical? Even if he was a cripple, the power still existed in some corner of his body? Thinking of this, Gong Dai suddenly became very anxious to find the old man and ask him clearly. Gong Yimo was forced into a bowl of tonic by Gong Dai. She frowned in pain. Gong Dai quickly brought her some sweet milk to wash it down. Only then did her little frown loosen. Throughout the whole process, she was extremely attached to Gong Dai's embrace. The surroundings were quiet, and she slept very comfortably. Knowing that her body was not in danger, Gong Dai gradually calmed down. It could only be said that the 9th level had completely changed her body. Under the influence of the fetal qi and blood, she recovered very quickly. Gong Dai looked at his 40-year-old hands, and his eyes flashed with determination. He must rush to the 9th level. As long as there was a way to be with her, he would not give up. Have you hugged enough? If you have, then leave. I haven't done acupuncture for you today. That old man walked in casually. Because Gong Dai wanted to be alone, he asked everyone to leave. Gong Dai grabbed Gong Yimo's hand and asked coldly, "How can I rush to the 9th level?" The old man smacked his lips. Wait until you truly experience the 9th level of wind and nature, world nature. Then you will naturally rush to the 9th level. What exactly is world nature? Gong Dai seemed to be asking him, but also seemed to be asking himself. The old man walked over and patted Gong Dai's shoulder. Everyone has a different understanding of it. As for when you will be able to understand it, even I can't say. At that moment, Gong Dai finally knew who he was. Let's go. Otherwise, do you want to let this girl see your current appearance? The old man laughed evilly as he pulled Gong Dai. The sooner you comprehend the 9th level, the sooner you two can be together. Otherwise, with your current appearance, you can even be her father. Gong Dai did not move. Comprehending the 9th level was very important. Not wanting the royal sister to see his current appearance was also very important. But once he thought of leaving, Gong Dai felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Their child would be born in half a month. Should he leave and recuperate properly, or should he use this disfigured old face to accompany her by her side? He obviously did not want to leave any unbearable image in her heart. But, let's go. The old man suddenly reached out and grabbed Gong Dai's shoulder, preparing to forcefully take him away. But when he pulled, he realized that Gong Dai did not move. He lowered his head and heard a weak voice gnashing her teeth. Damn it! Where are you taking my husband? It turned out that Gong Yimo had already woken up and was grabbing Gong Dai's hand. At that moment, Gong Dai finally panicked. He did not want the royal sister to see his current appearance, but her grip was so tight that he could not bear to break free. Seeing that Gong Yimo had woken up, the old man grinned. You're just a little girl who has just entered the transformative state, and you want to compete with me in internal energy? Go away. Chapter 764. As he spoke, he grabbed Gong Dai and lifted him up. But what he didn't expect was that Gong Dai would be held tightly by Gong Yimo and wouldn't budge. The old man was a little embarrassed, and he shouted again. Go. This time, he used 80% of his strength and pulled Gong Dai. Gong Yimo grabbed Gong Dai's hand, but Gong Dai was still pulled away. Gong Yimo grabbed empty air, and her big eyes filled with tears. She sat on the bed and stared blankly at Gong Dai. Gong Dai, you don't want me anymore? She asked quickly and pitifully. Gong Dai's heart melted, and he shook off the old man. He reached out and grabbed her hand that hadn't let go. His black clothes fluttered, and he once again pulled Gong Yimo into his arms. Silly Momo, why wouldn't I want you? For the second time, the old man looked at his empty hands and didn't understand what was wrong with this world. He was humiliated by Gong Yimo, and how did Gong Dai, who had no internal energy, manage to break free from him? Could it be that Gong Dai's internal energy had begun to awaken? Gong Yimo once again grabbed Gong Dai's hand and felt a lot more at ease. She leaned over and buried her head in his arms. I thought I'd never see you again. She had been able to hold on until now, but when she saw him, her tears were like a broken dam and couldn't be held back. How could you do this? How could you leave just like that? Why don't you want me? Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Her questions reminded Gong Ju of the time when she cried in the snow. I know everything. Don't cry. He frowned deeply. His wife in his arms was crying like a person made of tears. It made his heart ache, but he didn't know where to start. The old man who had been ignored by Huali looked at the inseparable couple. His beard twitched, and he didn't know what he was angry about. Are you done hugging? Your husband hasn't done any acupuncture today. Are you trying to kill him? Before Gong Yimo could say anything, Gong Dai glared at the old man. His stance seemed to say that if you dare to bully my wife, I'll teach you a lesson. The old man felt guilty under his stare. What are you staring at? Little ingrate. Have you forgotten who pulled you out from the hands of the king of hell? When Gong Yimo heard this, she quickly looked up and sized up Gong Dai. Then, she saw his hand. His heart ached and he couldn't help but cry again. It was all because of her that his life force had been sucked dry. That was why he had almost died and had to wear a mask all this time. And when he was in danger, she was not by his side. How desperate must he have been at that time? Gong Dai seemed to have guessed what she was thinking and wiped her tears again helplessly. It's fine. Back then, I was so happy to die for you. The old man was agitated. He went berserk in the room. Are you leaving or not? Why must we leave? Gong Yimo hugged Gong Dai tightly. He's mine. Don't even think about it. The old man raised his eyebrows unhappily. You're so unreasonable. I saved your husband. Instead of thanking me, you're giving me this attitude? Gong Yimo pursed her lips. I don't care. You can't take him away. Why do you want to take him away? Don't tell me you can't bear to see us being lovey-dovey? Gong Yimo saw through his intentions with one sentence. The old man coughed dryly. Anyway, he wants to leave with me. Do you want him to leave with me and be treated by me or wait for death by your side? You choose. Gong Yimo was in a difficult position. She looked at Gong Dai pitifully. The reluctance in her eyes was almost tangible. When Gong Dai saw her like this, he couldn't help but press her head against his chest and tell her firmly, I'm not leaving. I won't leave you. Gong Yimo pursed her lips and closed her eyes uncomfortably. The old man couldn't bear to see her like this. He touched his nose. Did he go overboard? Why do you want to leave? Gong Yimo's voice was muffled. Gong Dai was silent for a moment and said softly, he said that the great Tao is heartless. Wind and nature are the gates to the heavenly Tao. So if I stay by royal sister's side, I will never be able to understand. Gong Yimo didn't know whether to believe this or not. This old man looked very mischievous. Suddenly, she thought of something and looked coldly at the old man. Elder Master of Mount Yunding, did he want to separate us because he couldn't protect his wife? The old man was stunned and then stomped his foot. Bastard! Do I look like that kind of person? Also, how do you know who I am? Gong Yimo looked at his waist. Legend has it that you went out to sea to look for spiritual medicine for your wife, but you didn't find it. Gong Yimo remembered this part of the past very well. Your wife died. To remember her, you drowned your sorrows in alcohol. It is said that your weapon is the whip on your waist. It was woven from your wife's hair. Wind and nature is also a top-notch martial art that you created. The old man's expression became very conflicted. When Gong Yimo mentioned his wife, his expression was solemn. When she mentioned the whip, he couldn't help but touch his waist and reminisce. When she mentioned that he created a top-notch martial art, he became proud again. The multiple expressions made his old face become ferocious. So what if I am? So what if I'm not? He snorted conceitedly. Gong Yimo said softly, if old ancestor can take pity on this grand disciple. I, Gong Yimo, became a disciple of Mount Yunding. So I am your grand disciple. As for me, I can no longer bear to be separated from my husband. I believe that old ancestor understands the pain of lovesickness the most. You shouldn't let a pregnant woman like me suffer this pain. Gong Yimo's words made the old man fall silent. This kind of person who had lived for a long time had the most eccentric temperament. If he insisted on taking Gong Dai away, she couldn't do anything about it. But she still wanted to gamble. Gong Dai suddenly squeezed her hand tightly. Don't be afraid. I won't leave. His expression was firm. He wanted to live so badly and break through the 9th tier. Wasn't it so that he could appear when she needed him the most? Now that she needed him, how could he leave? The two of them interlocked their fingers and finally looked at the old man together. The old man took a step back from their gazes. Gong Yimo started to use her ultimate move. Old ancestor must like newborns very much. Coincidentally, your grand disciple's stomach is carrying one now. Can you really bear to not have your father by your side when he is born? Gong Yimo continued to use her moves. I heard that your wife is the kindest person. She loves children the most. Not having children is her life's regret. Are you sure that if you break us up now, she will be happy to know? I heard that old ancestor is mischievous, but his heart isn't bad. He probably won't do anything to break us up, right? Gong Yimo continued to use her moves until the old man couldn't fight back at all. The old man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Where did you get all these rumors from? Gong Yimo smiled mysteriously. Maybe it's from a dream? The ancients still believed in this, especially the old man who had entered the heavenly Tao sect. He immediately sighed. Chapter 765. If he stays by your side, he might not be able to comprehend the 9th level in his lifetime. If he can't comprehend the 9th level, he will die. If that's the case, do you still want him to stay by your side? When he asked this, Gong Yimo hesitated. But when she thought of Gong Dai, she believed that he could do it. Gong Dai pinched her face. I can do it. Gong Yimo's eyes shone brightly. For you, I can do it. I believe in you. The old man poured cold water on him. Kid, you have to think clearly. Currently, I'm the only one who can keep you alive. If you can't comprehend it after a long time, then I won't waste my time with you. When that time comes, only death awaits you. I don't think I have the heart to save you a second time. I've thought it through. I want to stay by her side and comprehend the 9th level. Gong Dai looked at the old man seriously. The determination in his eyes was moving. The old man couldn't help but think that if he was so determined and sure of what he wanted, he wouldn't have ended up in this state. At that moment, he felt a little sour. All right, I'll return your husband to you. But every time I perform acupuncture on him, the movement will be a little loud. Gong Yimo immediately continued, I can set up a protective shield. Also, I like to drink you cheese wine the most. I'll definitely not cut off your supply. When the old man heard this, he looked at Gong Yimo with a faint smile. All right, I'll go now. After saying that, he ran away in a flash, finally giving Gong Yimo and Gong Dai some time alone. After not seeing each other for more than 2 months, the husband and wife looked at each other with a lingering feeling that they didn't want to look away. I want to see your face, Gong Yimo said. Seeing that Gong Dai didn't move, that pair of ink-black eyes flickered. She carefully reached out to take off his mask, but at the last moment, she was caught by him. Royal sister, don't look. Gong Yimo's nose and eyes were red. When she heard that, she even sounded like she was about to cry. It's not nice, Gong Dai sighed. The mask was exquisitely made. It was silver in color, but whenever Gong Yimo thought of his appearance under the mask, she couldn't help but feel sad. There were still scars on his face that she had left behind, as well as the traces of his old age after she had sucked his life force dry. These were all covered up by his mask and played down. I'll be fine. Gong Dai saw that she was sad and could only comfort her like this. Gong Yimo suddenly turned her head and refused to look at him. You don't love me. Gong Dai's eyes widened. This accusation was too much. How could he not love her? Gong Yimo pursed her lips. If you love me, why would you do something so dangerous? What if I didn't save you and you died? If you die and I live, how painful would that be? How could you allow me to endure such pain? You don't love me. As she spoke, Gong Yimo cried again. She seemed to have become more and more delicate. Her heart was filled with endless grievances and sorrow. Gong Dai didn't know what to do. He reached out his hand to touch her hair. If you say that, you don't love me either. When Gong Yimo heard that, she glared at him with tears in her eyes. That fierce look made it seem like he was her enemy. Gong Dai chuckled softly. His voice was still as elegant as ever. It was hard to get tired of hearing it. If you love me, why did you have to die together with the bad guy? If he humiliated me, so be it. As long as I don't die, there will always be a chance to get out of this predicament. But for me, you chose to die together with him. Didn't you think about how painful it would be for me to live alone after you, and the child died? You let me endure such torture and live in this world. You don't love me either. Gong Yimo instantly felt that she couldn't defend herself. She was angry, aggrieved, and scared. In the end, she pushed Gong Dai onto the bed and bit his shoulder hard. Gong Dai groaned softly. It was a little painful, but he didn't forget to protect Gong Yimo's stomach with his hands so that she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I don't care. You're clearly alive, but you didn't let me find you. Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Her tears fell drop by drop onto Gong Dai's collarbone. I really thought that I would never see you again in this life. You're too bad. I don't like you anymore. As she spoke, she struggled to get down. Gong Dai quickly hugged her tightly. No, you can't not like me before I die. He smiled and said domineeringly. Gong Yimo smelled the faint cold fragrance on his body. Her heart couldn't calm down. Then why didn't you let me see your face? Gong Dai hugged her even tighter. I don't want you to see me like this. Gong Yimo pursed her lips. Why? Silly. Gong Dai looked into her eyes. Gong Yimo felt that she was about to drown in that pair of inky eyes. I hope that in your heart, I'll always be the best. Gong Yimo said hoarsely, you'll always be the best in my heart. Gong Dai didn't say anything. His current appearance didn't match up to her. She could feel the dimness in his eyes. Gong Yimo said again, I'm your wife. You should believe me. No matter what you look like in my heart, you'll always be the best. As she spoke, she reached out to take it off. Gong Dai suddenly hugged her and sat up. You won't regret it? Never. Gong Dai endured it and looked at the determination in her eyes. His heart relaxed a little. Perhaps Royal Sister wouldn't despise him, even if he despised himself now. Seeing that he wasn't moving, Gong Yimo reached out to touch his mask. The cold touch made Gong Yimo tremble. She held her breath and gently took off the mask. The face in front of her wasn't that scary. Gong Dai was still Gong Dai, just a little older and had become a handsome uncle. The only pity was that there were 3 hideous scars on his face and his half-black and half-white hair, which made him look even older. Seeing that Gong Yimo was silent, Gong Dai quickly wanted to take the mask back. He didn't want Royal Sister to see his current appearance. His face was disfigured, he was old, and he had lost all his martial arts. Even he despised himself, but Gong Yimo stopped him. Don't wear a mask in the future. It'll make it hard to breathe. Gong Dai's knuckles turned green from holding the mask. He didn't dare to look into her eyes. Gong Yimo suddenly smiled. Are you afraid that I'll despise you? Gong Dai didn't say anything. He only looked to the side. He didn't dare to look at Gong Yimo's current expression. He wasn't afraid that Gong Yimo would despise him. He was more afraid that her eyes would be filled with sympathy and self-blame. Gong Yimo snickered. Taking advantage of Gong Dai's silence, she raised her head slightly and gently planted a kiss on his sexy thin lips. She trembled slightly, but she knew that it was because she was happy. Gong Dai was already shocked by this sudden kiss. His eyes stared at her without blinking, but he could only see her overly thick eyelashes and her joyful face. I'm so happy. Gong Yimo sighed in satisfaction. You're finally back by my side. Chapter 766. At that moment, Gong Dai couldn't describe what he was feeling. Something soft wrapped around Gong Dai's heart. It was warm, and he didn't feel tense at all. He looked at the girl who was crying and laughing in front of him. No, it should be the little woman. She was really happy. She was kneeling on top of him with a big belly, smiling so widely that one could see her teeth and not her eyes. Even though he had become old and ugly, she was still young and beautiful. Even though he had lost all his martial arts, she had already reached the stage of perfection. She still treated him as a treasure that she had lost and found again. She would gladly accept whatever he looked like. Gong Dai heaved a sigh of relief and smiled slightly. At that moment, Gong Yimo suddenly felt that he had become much younger. The way he pursed his lips and smiled was still so mesmerizing. Could it be that beauty was in the eye of the beholder? Seeing him smile, Gong Yimo leaned forward to kiss his lips again. Gong Dai slightly avoided it. He was very happy that Gong Yimo didn't mind, but he still minded. He didn't deserve to be close to her in his current state. Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows a little unhappily. Hey, when you recover, you'll be a handsome man again. But women age faster than men. In the future, when my face is full of wrinkles and you're still a handsome uncle, will you be close to me? Gong Dai said without thinking. I like you no matter what you look like. Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows a little proudly. So you don't dislike me? For example, if I lose my shape after giving birth, or if I have yellow-brown spots and stretch marks, you don't mind? Gong Dai gently hugged her belly and sighed slightly. I like everything about you. Gong Yimo was satisfied and held his face with both hands. I like everything about you too. No matter if you're young, old, disfigured, or not, as long as it's you, I like you a lot. If you continue to avoid me, it means that when I'm old, you'll dislike me like how you dislike yourself now. I'll be unhappy. Gong Dai heard her twisting words and forcing logic, and his heart was extremely sour. His baby was always so good at coaxing people, making people unable to resist. Gong Yimo knelt down a little, held his head, and kissed him. She approached him very slowly, so slowly that she could clearly feel that Gong Dai wanted to dodge, but he resisted. She could feel that his hand was very tight, and his eyelashes fluttered uneasily. In the end, he simply closed his eyes. Gong Yimo could not help but laugh. "Open your eyes." Her voice was clear and melodious, with a hint of sweet hoarseness. Gong Dai opened his eyes. That pair of dark eyes seemed to be expressing a question. "I want you to watch how I kiss you." Gong Yimo's words were very domineering, and she successfully flirted with Gong Ju. Gong Ju's face quickly reddened, and he looked at her in disbelief. The next second, the other party's sweet lips were pressed against his. At that moment, the world spun. Gong Dai could clearly see that her eyes were filled with his disfigured face, but they were still filled with tenderness. Her soft and tender lips traced his lips little by little, and in an instant, the surrounding was filled with her fragrance. Gong Dai's hands unconsciously hugged her tighter, and he took the initiative to deepen the kiss. Gong Yimo was very cooperative. Their lips and teeth entangled, and the two of them could not stop kissing. The temperature in the bed rose. The two of them were newlyweds, and they were separated by life and death. At this moment, there was no need to talk about the passion between them. However, Gong Dai firmly remembered that they could not have sex after 7 months, and he resisted with all his might. Otherwise, there might be a deeper level of communication. Gong Yimo did not want to be separated from him for a moment. After being pregnant, her body became more sensitive and easy to be aroused. Moreover, she could feel that Gong Dai was more tolerant than her, so she leaned over and whispered softly, "I've already entered the stage of transformation, and I'm not an ordinary pregnant woman. Others can't, but I may not." This sentence was like a sudden fire. At that moment, Gong Yimo seemed to see 2 clusters of small flames in Gong Dai's eyes. "You're really a vixen." Gong Yimo curled her lips into a smile. "Yes, I'm a vixen sent by the heavens to seduce you." Gong Dai pushed Gong Yimo down. Just when Gong Yimo thought that Gong Dai would make a move, he hugged her tightly, panting, and did not move. "You can't have sex after 7 months?" He kissed her lips impatiently to quench his thirst again and again. But the more he quenched, the more thirsty he became. "Let's wait a little longer." At this moment, he had completely forgotten his complicated feelings from before. His heart and eyes were only filled with the vixen in front of him. It was really not enough to give his entire being to her. He wished that he could integrate her into his bones and blood. Gong Yimo giggled from his increasingly restless kisses. After her body became more sensitive, the other party's kiss was heavy and itchy, and it was indescribably seductive. It made her lick her lips a little thirsty. She hugged Gong Dai and kissed him for a long time. The two of them were simply inseparable. Just when they were so entangled that they almost had an accident, but it was not like they would have an accident. Suddenly, an unhappy voice came from afar. "Brat, do you still remember that you have to perform acupuncture? Seriously, the land of the gentle, the hero's mound." The old man's voice made the young couple blush instantly. They had just reunited after a short separation and were a little confused. They had almost forgotten something important. Gong Yimo hammered herself in annoyance. Gong Dai's heart ached as he rubbed her. "Silly girl, you don't know." Gong Yimo saw that he was smiling gently. Half of his face was still as handsome as a painting. The mature charm of the handsome uncle made her dizzy. She hugged him and acted coquettishly. "Gong Dai, why are you still so good-looking even when you're old? You're so charming." Gong Dai could not help but smile even more brightly. "Charming you to death?" Gong Yimo instantly glared at him. "Who else do you want to charm to death?" As she spoke, she put the mask on Gong Dai's face. She even said angrily, "You're already like this, yet you still have the potential to attract bees and butterflies. You really make people worry." Gong Dai chuckled under the mask. His heart flashed with gentleness. Royal Sister was worried that he would feel uncomfortable if others saw his appearance. This silly girl, he only cared about whether she would hate him or not. What did others have to do with him? After putting it on, Gong Yimo helped Gong Dai tidy up his clothes. Then, she walked out hand in hand with him. When the old man saw them come out, he said in a strange tone, "I thought you guys couldn't bear to come out." Gong Yimo was in a good mood now. Her words were sweet. "How could we? We definitely won't disobey the old ancestor's summons." Then, "Shall we begin now?" Only then was the old man satisfied. "I need a very large empty space." Gong Yimo immediately brought them to the square in front of the hall. Then, she asked all the palace servants to leave. They were not allowed to come close. The old man looked at the place and felt that it was all right. "Usually, it's an old friend of mine who helps me. After all, extending one's life is equivalent to defying the heavens and changing one's fate. It's not a small matter. Can you do it?" Gong Yimo glanced at Gong Dai and nodded firmly. "As long as you tell me what to do, I can do it." The old man nodded. "You just need to circulate your energy and gather all the energy in the surroundings here. Then, you can lend me a hand." With that, he did not explain further and immediately started to circulate his energy. Chapter 767. Gong Ju stood in the middle of the square. He had experienced this many times. His lifeline had been established little by little, but this only treated the symptoms and not the root cause. If he didn't comprehend nature under the heavens as soon as possible, and if he didn't reach the 9th level as soon as possible, how could he be together with Sister Gong? The old man wanted him to comprehend without emotions because nature and Tao had no emotions. They were always fair. Did he really have to do this to comprehend it? A gust of wind rose and Gong Dai was sent into the air by the old man's inner energy. He closed his eyes, and it was as if there were countless hands in the air attacking him from all directions. They hit different acupuncture points, making his body feel warm and soft. The inner energy distorted the space. Gong Yimo could not see Gong Dai's face clearly, but she could feel how the old man was treating Gong Dai. He used his inner energy to form needles and pierce them into Gong Dai's various acupuncture points to help his meridians recover and stimulate his vitality. So this was the power of the transformative realm? She had not really tried it yet. Now is the time. "Girl, help me." From afar, the old man's roar could be heard. Gong Yimo instantly understood what to do. She waved her hand and endless inner energy condensed in this space. The clouds in the sky seemed to have turned into a whirlpool and were pulled downwards. What Gong Yimo had to do was to follow the old man and quickly inject inner energy into the places where he used his inner energy to form needles. This was a method of forcefully filling a person's acupuncture points with vitality, using external force to fill the person's body with strength. The two experts working together could change the color of the sky. Gong Dai felt that his body was once again filled with strength in the air. This strength was not inner energy but vitality. Unfortunately, his meridians were all broken. Otherwise, with so much vitality circulating in his body, it could stay and form a cycle. Now, as long as the old man and Gong Yimo stopped, the vitality would slowly run away. So Gong Dai had to use needles every day to maintain his life. The key was himself. Gong Dai closed his eyes and sensed his body. He knew that more than half of his body was dead. Now that someone was forcefully injecting life force into his body, the dark parts gradually lit up, allowing him to enter a wonderful state of inner vision. The 9th layer. If the 9th layer could be triggered, it meant that his foundation had not been completely destroyed. There must be an unknown power somewhere in his body, waiting for him to discover it and light it up. The world was natural. What is nature? The old man said that what he experienced was only one word: balance. Nature was balanced. She would never favor anyone or any kind of creature. She would use her own methods to create balance, bringing about a steeple of balance. Humans were the highest layer, the creatures closest to nature. Humans could sense this balance and maintain it. This was their innate mission. Naturally, there were no feelings. Gong Dai felt that his understanding was very reasonable. but it also didn't make sense and didn't conform to his philosophy. What was the nature of the world? Thinking of this, he opened his eyes and saw Gong Yimo not far away. At this moment, her expression was tense. Because it was her first time doing this, she was afraid that she couldn't keep up with the old man's speed and hit the wrong spot, causing terrible consequences. However, what she didn't notice was that the old man beside her was very surprised. He seemed to be very surprised by Royal Sister's ability to understand. Moreover, this kind of acupuncture required a lot of internal energy. Royal Sister's ninth layer was forcefully broken through by him, but she didn't show any signs of instability at all. Such an overloaded operation was completely within her control. It could be seen that the old man was right about one thing. Royal Sister's ability to understand was stronger than his. Because she understood what nature was, she received the recognition of wind and nature and became a complete master of the transcendent realm. The entire square was swept by wind and clouds, gradually approaching the end. Gong Yimo's clothes were already soaked in sweat. After the old man finished, he ran to her side and patted her on the shoulder. As expected, the student has surpassed the master. Good grand disciple, with your talent and ability to understand, you will go further than this old man in the future. Gong Yimo wiped her sweat. Isn't the transcendent realm the peak? What can go further than that? The old man smiled mysteriously. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. At this moment, Gong Dai slowly landed. Gong Yimo immediately left the old man behind and walked over. Not sure if it was an illusion, Gong Yimo felt that his hair seemed to have become darker. Gong Dai. She hugged him and looked up to ask, "Do you feel better?" Gong Dai smiled. "With you here, I feel much better." The old man saw this scene and sighed. He touched the whip on his waist and walked away. Gong Dai saw that she was covered in sweat and hurriedly urged her to wash up so that she wouldn't catch a cold. "Let's go together." Gong Yimo happily held his hand and led him to their residence. At this moment, their positions seemed to have swapped. In the past, she was the one who was taken care of everywhere. She could do whatever she wanted and didn't have to worry about anything else. But now, she had to worry about everything. She and Gong Dai had swapped places, and it was Gong Dai who needed her protection. She thought that she could be as meticulous as him and take good care of him. Gong Dai held her hand, his heart feeling warm and sweet. It felt good to be taken care of by her, but Gong Dai wrapped her hand in his. He enjoyed the feeling of taking care of her even more. At this moment, the sky was already dark. When they reached the bedroom, it was already time for dinner. Gong Yimo kept putting food into Gong Dai's bowl while looking at him with a smile. At this moment, all the palace servants had retreated. Gong Dai also took off his mask. Gong Yimo was looking in the direction of his disfigured face. Gong Dai was a little nervous and wished that he could change places with her. "I feel that you've really become a little younger." Gong Dai couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, with you, of course I'm younger." Gong Yimo ate one bite at a time. "Oh yes, what happened to those annoying Japanese people today?" Gong Dai's face turned cold when he heard this. "They're on death row." Gong Yimo stuck out her tongue. "It's good to let them suffer a little. They think that Dayu State is easy to bully. They even set their sights on me. It's as if their country is so powerful. This kind of blind confidence and peeking at others is really annoying." Gong Dai saw her frown and said softly, "If you hate them, then kill them. You can kill them however you want." After all, those in Zhao prison weren't just for show. Gong Yimo waved her hand and suddenly laughed. "It's okay. I have to thank them for forcing you to appear. Let them suffer a little more, and then go back with their tails between their legs. The baby is about to be born. I'd better not kill." Gong Dai heard this and stroked her belly. His eyes were full of tenderness. "As you wish." Chapter 768. Gong Yimo said that she wouldn't pursue the matter, so Gong Dai went along with her. However, he wouldn't let it go so easily. The royal sister was pregnant and didn't want to kill anyone. However, there were many ways to make people wish they were dead in Zhao prison. The next day, after the imperial court, Gong Yimo finally had the mood to talk to Gong Dai about something else. Because of Gong Dai's sudden appearance, there was a huge uproar inside and outside the imperial court. However, the power struggle between husband and wife that they imagined didn't happen. Gong Yimo directly said that Gong Dai was injured, and he would continue to be the regent after he recovered. Gong Dai also didn't express any objections. This made those who had other thoughts unable to stir up any trouble. Gong Dai, you said that the only antidote was taken by me. Then what about those who were poisoned? There are still thousands of people. Gong Yimo laid on Gong Dai's lap. There were many booklets piled up on the couch. Now that Gong Dai was back, she definitely didn't need to look at these things anymore. Ha 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 ha, Gong Ju held the booklet in one hand and gently patted her belly with the other. Hearing her words, he whispered, "You can't rush it. Perhaps one day, the third antidote will appear by accident. Momo, Momo." At this time, a cheerful voice sounded. Gong Yimo quickly got up from Gong Dai's embrace, but was forcefully hugged back by Gong Dai. He hated this voice very much. Qiu Xingfeng came in without any obstructions. This was because Gong Yimo had already told them that he was her master, and they had to treat him with respect. Now that Gong Yimo's people all knew Qiu Xingfeng, they subconsciously let him in when they saw him. When he came in and saw that Gong Dai was also there, Qiu Xingfeng didn't think too much. He just stared at Gong Yimo's stomach and sighed exaggeratedly. "So big." Gong Yimo pursed her lips and smiled. "Didn't you go out with your master to find the antidote? Why are you back so soon?" The battle with the Snow Clan caused a huge commotion. Qiu Zhongchan finally understood that Gong Yimo also didn't have the antidote. Helplessly, he went out with Qiu Xingfeng, hoping to find the legendary third antidote. Why was Qiu Xingfeng back so soon? Qiu Xingfeng walked closer and reached out his hand to touch Gong Yimo's stomach, but was slapped away by Gong Dai. Qiu Xingfeng looked at the stomach and then at Gong Dai. He felt wronged, but he didn't dare to move anymore. "Master's master," he said with a pitiful voice. Qiu Xingfeng's was with Qiu Xingfeng was with Qiu Shui was. St Shui would be nice to Shui Shui with Shui's. TTT, TTT to teat go toot to T, T-you've. Yes. Qiu Xingfeng's eyes lit up. He took out many bottles and jars from the bag on his back. Gong Yimo hurried over. She held her stomach and squatted down with Qiu Xingfeng to check the bottles. Gong Dai saw the two of them squatting on the carpet and whispering to each other. His heart ached and his face looked terrible. It was just that he was wearing a mask so no one could see it. "What are these?" Gong Yimo thought they were elixirs from Yunding Mountain, but Qiu Xingfeng patted her. "I bought them all." Gong Yimo suddenly had a bad feeling. "How much did you spend?" Qiu Xingfeng said naturally. "I spent all the money you gave me." Was he asking for a beating with such a cheerful tone? Gong Yimo hit him fiercely. "Are you stupid? I gave you more than 1,000,000 silver notes, and you spent it all in 2 months? You're such a wastrel." Qiu Xingfeng covered his head and looked at her with a pair of big, limpid eyes. "Everything I bought is good stuff." Gong Yimo looked at the bottles. They were made of coarse porcelain and the jade bottles were also broken jade. How could there be good stuff in them? Was he hiding his true colors? She flipped through them. "Where did these come from?" Qiu Xingfeng said proudly. "I saw on their signboards elixirs and resurrection from the dead. Isn't this kind of medicine powerful?" Fuck. He sounded like a swindler. Before Gong Yimo could get angry, Qiu Xingfeng pushed the bottles in front of her. "Haven't you been looking for the antidote? There must be something you want in here." Looking at his proud eyes waiting for her praise, what else could Gong Yimo do? She sighed and suppressed her anger. She clenched her teeth and patted his shoulder. "Thank you for your hard work. You did a good job." She refused in her heart. More than 1,000,000 taels of silver. Qiu Xingfeng was as happy as if he had taken a rejuvenation pill. He looked very charming when he smiled. Gong Yimo couldn't help but stare at him. If she gave birth to a son, she would want him to look like Qiu Xingfeng. His smile was clean and pure. Girls would like him. The next second, her eyes were covered by someone. Gong Dai couldn't stand it anymore. He glared at Qiu Xingfeng and felt that this person didn't know what was good for him. Didn't he see that the royal sister was pregnant? How could he disturb her for so long? Shouldn't you go back and rest? Xiao Xingfeng looked at Gong Dai with dissatisfaction. Gong Dai was wearing a mask, so he didn't feel that scary. And he felt that, when did Gong Dai become like a normal person? He wasn't afraid of Gong Dai, who didn't have any martial arts. So he raised his chin. I still have something to say. He liked spending time with Gong Yimo. After not seeing her for 2 months, he missed her. Gong Yimo wouldn't reject Xiao Xingfeng. Just as she was about to tell Gong Dai not to worry, Gong Dai suddenly coughed. What's wrong with you? Gong Yimo's expression became serious. Gong Yi paused for a moment before replying. Nothing. Gong Yimo couldn't see his expression and thought that it had worsened. She wanted to take off Gong Dai's mask, but remembered that Xiao Xingfeng was still there. She quickly said, Master, why don't you go back and rest? Come find me tomorrow? Xiao Xingfeng pouted. He could see that in Gong Yimo's heart, Gong Dai was the most important, but he was very obedient. Seeing that Gong Yimo was nervous, he nodded even though he was unhappy. Then I'll come find you tomorrow. Okay. Gong Yimo quickly asked someone to send Xiao Xingfeng out. Before he left, Xiao Xingfeng emphasized, these are all good medicine. Don't throw them away. I know. Gong Yimo almost asked someone to throw these things away. Who knew if they would get sick after taking those liars' medicine? After Xiao Xingfeng left, Gong Yimo went to take off Gong Dai's mask, but Gong Dai grabbed her hand. I'm fine. What do you mean by fine? Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows. You can't be careless with your current condition. Gong Dai turned his face away. I'm really fine. I just don't want you to stare at him. Then, the room was filled with a fragrant smell. When Gong Yimo smelled it, she felt a jolt of energy. This pill looked very effective. It might really be something good. Gong Dai hugged her and said anxiously, Don't walk in the future. I'll carry you. Gong Yimo naturally followed his advice. She found a comfortable position in his arms. Let's go. Let's go and pick up the pill to take a look. Yes, my princess. Gong Ju was a little helpless. He carried her to pick up the medicine. Gong Yimo held it in her hand and blew on it. She carefully examined it. Although she didn't understand pharmacology, she could tell at a glance that it was good stuff. Gong Yimo's eyes fell on the remaining bottles. Let's go. We'll go treasure hunting. At this moment, the old man saw that Gong Yimo and the rest had finally come in after not coming out for so long. Before he could get angry, his nose twitched and his eyes widened. Isn't this the 9 transformations heart-cleansing pill from India? They even have this. The royal family of Dayu State is really rich. Gong Yimo saw him and asked directly, What's the use of this? The old man saw that she didn't know what it was and said very proudly, You're so ignorant. This can help people regain their sanity. In other words, it's most effective for those who have lost their minds. Gong Yimo was stunned when she heard that. Then, her heart pounded. What about those who have lost their minds? The old man rolled his eyes. Of course it's effective too. Gong Yimo didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she held the pill. In her previous life, she had been looking for ways to help her master, but she couldn't find anything. But now, Xingfeng had gone out and found it on his own. She looked at the dozens of bottles on the ground and waved at the old man. Come, old master, take a look. See if there's anything good here. The old man heard her and walked over. He said, Could it be that your 9 transformations heart-cleansing pill was found in this pile of junk? Who would waste good things like this? It's good enough that you could find one. He said it with disdain, but he still sat on the carpet. Gong Yimo asked Gong Dai to put her down on the carpet. Gong Dai looked at the old man and the young girl who were eager to try. He didn't understand. How could he understand the joy of searching for treasures and opening packages? Especially when he found that there were treasures in this pile. Gong Yimo shook it and opened a wooden bottle. She poured out an ordinary-looking pill from it. It didn't have any fragrance, just like a mud ball. She pouted. Sure enough, good things weren't cabbages. But the old man was stunned and then exclaimed, "Wait, don't throw it away." Gong Yimo was frightened by him. "What's wrong?" The old man snatched the pill and looked at it repeatedly. "It can't be wrong. This is reincarnation breath." It's a life-saving medicine that's 100 times more effective than the Great Rejuvenation Pill, and it has no side effects. Gong Yimo was stunned. "Oh my, master is so powerful." The old man didn't hesitate and opened the rest of the bottles and jars. He looked more and more excited. Red blood pill, rising crane pill, red dust snow, sacrificial water. The old man's expression changed unpredictably. "So, the supreme medicine immortal really exists." As he spoke, his expression became colder and colder. Back then, if he was so lucky to get the supreme medicine immortal's medicine, his wife wouldn't have died. But he heard that the medicine immortal went out to sea. He went to look for him, but he couldn't find him even after his wife died. Where did these medicines come from? The old man's voice trembled slightly. Now that the person was dead, he didn't know why he had to ask. Gong Yimo saw that his expression wasn't right, so she told him everything about Qiu Xingfeng, who knew that the old man was suddenly shocked. People with such heaven-defying luck must be cultivated well. I didn't expect that my grand disciples were all so powerful. As he spoke, he disappeared like a gust of wind. Gong Yimo couldn't help but smile. Then she saw that there was one bottle left. This bottle was the only one made of iron. It was rusty and looked very old. Was this also given to Master by the medicine immortal? She reached out to take it, but felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Chapter 770. Before he could figure out what this feeling was, a white and gray pill rolled out after opening it. Gong Dai suddenly made a sound of surprise. "Royal sister, this looks like the one I gave you." Gong Yimo thought of the pill she ate. It was the antidote extracted from Shuelian's flesh and blood. She couldn't help but frown. She hadn't thought about this for a long time. She didn't have time to think about it because Gong Dai was missing. Now, she didn't dare to think about it. So many elders and relatives had died. She didn't expect that in the end, only she and Gong Dai were alive. And Master. So, this could really be the antidote to the venomous insect? Gong Yimo said with a forced smile. She didn't believe it. Master could find so many good medicines. It was obvious that the medicine immortal thought highly of him. Whether it was teasing him or giving him good luck, there shouldn't be any medicine given by others. Gong Dai looked more and more. The smell is very similar too. Gong Yimo laughed. Then let's just show it to Si Wuyan. I didn't expect Master to be so capable and find so many good things. Well, he's used to seeing good medicine since he was young. He also knows medicine. How could he be cheated? This 1,000,000 taels is really worth it. Tomorrow, I'll praise him. Gong Dai pursed his lips. He thought that royal sister wouldn't like the uncle, who was 11 years older than her. His mood improved. The next day, when Qiu Xingfeng came, he received unprecedented enthusiasm from Gong Yimo. He blinked. It was so scary. That strange old man also looked at him like that yesterday. "Master, how did you get these medicines?" Gong Yimo asked curiously. Qiu Xingfeng could only tell Gong Yimo what he told the old man yesterday. "After I separated from Master, I went back. Who knew? I met a strange person who stopped me. He said he wanted me to be his disciple." Qiu Xingfeng was still a little angry. "I have a master. Why should I be his disciple?" I rejected him, but he kept pestering me. I said that I came out to buy medicine. He said that he also happened to have medicine. I took a look and saw that they were all good medicine. I told you to buy all of them. Speaking of this, he was a little proud. When that person heard that I wanted to buy all of them, he was not happy. He said that his medicine was very expensive, at least 1,000,000 taels. I thought I didn't have it, so I gave him all the banknotes. When he saw that I really had so much money, he was stunned. I took the opportunity to grab a dozen bottles and left. Gong Yimo was shocked by his wit and gave him a big thumbs up. Master, you're amazing, right? Qiu Xingfeng nodded furiously. Yesterday, that stinky old man who pretended to be my teacher even said that I suffered a great loss for not having a teacher. I am clearly very smart. Yes, Gong Yimo said straightforwardly, then took out the iron bottle. Is this also the medicine in that strange man's hands? Qiu Xingfeng narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. No. Gong Yimo widened her eyes. Then where did this come from? Qiu Xingfeng touched his chin. When I entered the city, I saw a pitiful old beggar outside the city. He said that he couldn't find his daughter and was about to die. I gave him the pancake. After he ate it, he gave me this bottle. Speaking of this, he pursed his lips. I was just about to ask him what this was, but I found that he was already dead. I had no choice but to bury him in the woods outside the city. Gong Yimo was shocked. She couldn't help but guess the identity of that old beggar. But then she smiled and shook her head. He was already dead. She didn't need to investigate further. Let the past dissipate in the dust. She asked someone to send the medicine in the iron bottle to see Wu Yin as fast as possible. If it was really the antidote, she would make a copy. Seeing her like this, Qiu Xingfeng asked curiously, "How is it? Do you have the medicine you need?" He looked expectant. Yes. Gong Yimo hesitated for a while and took out the 9 turns heart-cleansing pill. Then she looked into Qiu Xingfeng's eyes and asked slowly, "Master, do you want to become smarter?" Qiu Xingfeng's overly handsome face was stunned and then collapsed. "Do you also think that I'm stupid?" No, no, no. Master is the best. I mean, do you want to become like me?" Gong Yimo was a little uncertain. In her previous life, she had always wanted to find a way to save Master, but she couldn't find it until Master died. Now, the antidote was in her hands, but she was a little uncertain. Was this really what Master wanted? Gong Yimo asked, "Master, you have to answer seriously. Do you want to change your current life and become a normal person?" Qiu Xingfeng blinked. That innocent look made Gong Yimo feel that he might not understand her words. "Actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with me now." Suddenly, Qiu Xingfeng answered her very seriously. There was confusion in his eyes, but more than that, there was determination. "I know I'm stupid, but I don't have too many worries. On the other hand, Momo, you're very smart. Master is smart. Senior brothers and sisters are smart, but you all have more worries than me. So sometimes, it's better to be a little stupid, right?" Gong Yimo listened to him talk tirelessly. That clear voice was like a mountain stream. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt like she was enlightened. She looked at Qiu Xingfeng, who was still in white, and her heart warmed. "You're not stupid, you're just, great wisdom looks stupid." Qiu Xingfeng tilted his head and looked at her. This was really too cute. Gong Yimo couldn't help but pinch his face. "I'm praising Master. Master is good-looking, kind, and gentle, and is very smart at crucial moments. That's enough." Qiu Xingfeng wanted to hide, but he found that he couldn't escape from Gong Yimo's evil claws. He was shocked. "Momo, could it be that you're more powerful than me?" Gong Yimo let go of his red face. "Humph. I'm now in the 9th transformative state. In this world, the number of old monsters who are more powerful than me can be counted with one hand." This time, Qiu Xingfeng was really provoked. "Why? Why are you so fast?" I'm the master," he complained, feeling that it didn't feel good to be caught by his disciple. Gong Yimo patted his shoulder with a smile. It's okay. You're still the master. If anyone bullies you in the future, just tell them my name." Qiu Xingfeng looked at her with disdain. "That's too useless. A real man has an indomitable spirit. How can I let my disciple help me?" Gong Yimo giggled. "You don't understand. This is the real use of a disciple. Remember, a disciple is to be ordered around, not to be worshipped. Whatever you want, just tell me. As long as I have it." Before Qiu Xingfeng could speak, Gong Dai brought the medicine over. Seeing the two of them with their arms around each other's shoulders, his face darkened. He had to break through the ninth transformative state as soon as possible. Chapter 771. Then he would teach a certain pretty boy who took advantage of his stupidity to take advantage of her. Xiao Xingfeng felt very wronged. After being forced to drink a bowl of bitter medicine by Gong Dai, Gong Yimo's face scrunched up. She sneaked a peek at Gong Dai and found that layers of dark aura were transmitted through the mask. How scary. Her male master was too easily jealous. Xiao Xingfeng suddenly felt a little scared. Gong Dai was not good at martial arts now, but Gong Yimo was. What if Gong Yimo bullied him for her husband? How embarrassing would it be for him, a master, to be bullied by his disciple? Therefore, Xiao Xingfeng made a prompt decision to slip away as quickly as possible. Seeing that Xiao Xingfeng was still self-aware, Gong Dai's expression relaxed a little. Why did you come out? It's cold outside. Gong Yimo smiled. The early spring sun is good, so I want to sit in the garden. Oh, right. How do you feel after the treatment these days? Gong Dai paused. Still the same. Gong Yimo was a little discouraged, but she thought that Gong Dai must be more anxious than her, so she comforted him. Don't push yourself too hard. That, about nature in the world. What do you think? Gong Dai said softly, I have no idea. He really didn't have a clue. His mind was filled with thoughts of his royal sister and monopolizing her. He really did not know what nature in the world was. He would not understand balance like the old man and forget about love, nor would he be like royal sister, blessed by nature and recognized. He really pushed himself too hard. When he was dealing with government affairs, he was thinking about these things. Gong Yimo said softly as she ate the snacks that Gong Dai handed over. Do you know what nature is? Gong Dai looked up at her. A flower, a tree, a mountain, a water, a yin, a yang. Gong Yimo smiled. You're right, these are all. But there's one very important thing that you didn't say. Gong Dai looked at her quietly with his dark jade-like eyes. Gong Yimo pointed at a grass that just came out of the pavilion and said, Look at it. What do you see? Gong Dai looked at it and felt that the grass was green all over, shaking in the breeze as if it was stretching its limbs. Gong Yimo's gentle and quiet voice. What do you feel most about it? Balance is a very important part of nature, but there's something even more important. It's... At that moment, Gong Ju's heart seemed to light up, as if guiding him to a certain place. He only needed to take a step in that direction. Who knew that Gong Yimo suddenly? Ouch. Gong Dai immediately came back to his senses. He saw that Gong Yimo was sweating profusely, and a thought flashed through his mind. Royal Sister was about to give birth. He quickly got up and called for help as he brought Royal Sister to the delivery room that had been prepared beforehand. Everyone was on standby, so they weren't panicking.